Okay, I know it's strange that I've never touched Game of Thrones, as it is considered by many, if not the greatest, then definitely one of the greatest TV series ever created. But the truth is, I never found the need to watch it. Yeah, I always knew it was good, but for some reason it just never clicked. So I decided that I wouldn't be an uncultured swine anymore, and Game of Thrones time it was. And as I said earlier, many people consider Game of Thrones the best show ever created, so my expectations were high to say the least. But how good was the first Game of Thrones season really? Disclaimer, I haven't watched anything Game of Thrones related, nor have I spoiled anything for myself from the series. My opinion is strictly based on what I think and what I've seen from season 1. I may be wrong about a lot of things, or right about a lot of things. We'll see. World building. So the most important element for me in any piece of fiction is the world building, and the show does its best to create a really good world. But my problem is that I know the best is yet to come, as there is legit no way that the most insane piece of world building isn't on the other side of the wall. But as that isn't explored, at least not yet, I'm crossing my fingers that it will be with the Jon Snow's Benjen rescue mission. For now, we'll focus on what is explored. Towns and structures. We have Winterfell, King's Landing, the Night's Watch, the Eyrie, the Wall, and wherever Daenerys is. The Eyrie. Although pretty small for a castle, I really like the design. It's like a castle in the sky, and my favorite part about it is definitely the sky cells. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in fiction. King's Landing. Well, King's Landing is kinda basic. I mean, it's a cool castle town, don't get me wrong, but it's still just a regular castle town. Winterfell. Winterfell gives me kind of a Skyrim town vibe, which I really like. It's cozy in a way and even feels nostalgic for some reason, even though I've never seen it before. The Night's Watch. The Night's Watch is probably my favorite piece of world building. I love when the team is all white and snowy, with harsh conditions all around, with every day being a battle for survival, giving off the vibe of people living there against the power of nature. The Wall. The Wall is a giant piece of ice that separates all of our favorite characters from the seemingly building danger on the other side. Overall, it's a key point to the story as it is our main defense, and it's pretty cool. Wherever Daenerys is. Apart from shamans, savages and blood rituals, the place seems pretty basic, nothing too crazy out there. Creatures. We have the weirwood trees, savages, dragons and white walkers. I might be missing something? The weirwood trees. Now some of you might wonder why I put these trees in the creatures tab instead of the structures one. Well, it's because there's legit no way these guys ain't alive. Legit zero. Other than that, people seem to find comfort in them, visiting them to clear their heads or just pray. Savages. Well, they seem like normal people, at least I'm not noticing anything that different. I may be mistaken who the savages are though. Dragons. Okay, the dragoons are cool, not gonna lie. If Daenerys can command them to do what she says, it would be really interesting to see how others deal with her. Robert might have been right. White Walkers. These guys are quite interesting. I don't really know a lot about them other than that they can only take damage from fire, kinda convenient for some, but apparently if the story is about them told by this reliable source are true, they have some sort of pet spiders? Yeah, these guys are cool, and them having pet spiders would be even cooler. Characters. Let's start with the Starks. Eddard Stark. Eddard is simply him. He is an honorable, loyal and courageous man who deeply loves his family and friends. But as we know, loyalty gets you killed, as his loyalty towards Robert was the reason he traveled to King's Landing in the first place. Eddard always tends to show mercy when there's room for it, even to those not deserving. He isn't afraid to state what's wrong, or his opinion in general, even if the whole world is against him, because that's who Eddard is. He values honor, loyalty and honesty, and has a great sense of justice, but unfortunately the prettiest flowers always get picked first. As for the cruel world of Game of Thrones, a good man can only be an obstacle, needing to be crushed. Monkey D. Dragon from One Piece once said that a child is their parents' weak spot, and Eddard's situation is no different, as he dies for the sake of his children, but I have to argue that it wasn't his physical death that was the end of him, it was the death of his honor. The fact that he had to go against everything he stood for. From what I've said, you might think that Eddard is self-righteous, but you will be wrong, as he is relatively open-minded. An example for that is when he gave the order to kill the direwolf pups, but Jon Snow argued that it would be better to keep them. Eddard didn't disregard Jon's opinion, he acknowledged it, and even agreed. Overall, Eddard is a great husband, father and man. I'm kinda sad that there won't be any more of him, but at least we got to experience his character, even for a short period of time. Prediction for season 2? Well, he's kinda dead, so highlights from season 1? As I was really divided between him standing up to Robert about assassinating Daenerys and him lying at his execution, and the fact that we don't have a prediction for season 2, we'll do both of them. Let's start with him standing up to Robert. Now imagine this, you go face to face with the most powerful man in the world, that can order your death with just a raise of his finger, and you tell him that he is wrong and you're not going to follow his orders, and you do that in front of his council, which in one way or another lowers his authority. That takes some balls of steel. It definitely did help that Robert was Eddard's friend, but as we know, Robert isn't exactly the greatest human being, so there was always a chance of him punishing Eddard. His second highlight is him lying at his execution. We know how much Eddard values honor and honesty, so for him to lie that he did something so despicable just shows us how far he would go to protect his family, which makes the scene even more gut-wrenching. Catelyn Stark. Catelyn is the wife of Eddard and the mother of Rob's sons Arya, Bran and Rickon. Oh, and she's a certified Jon Snow hater. But let's first talk about her, and then we'll get to her attitude towards Jon Snow. She's a really brave and strong woman, and she loves her family to death, as we saw by the way she was losing her sanity guarding the unconscious Bran, begging the gods to bring him back. But she sometimes goes a little overboard with her emotions. As you know, there's a thin line between bravery and stupidity. And the way she captured Tyrion, yeah, I don't think that was bravery. She just lost control over her emotions and made a bad decision over her spite towards the Lannisters. But don't get me wrong, she had every reason to do so, knowing that they were the reason her son almost lost his life. I'm not saying what she did wasn't justified, I'm saying it was rushed and badly executed. As for her attitude towards Jon Snow, she sees him as a mistake. Jon is a constant reminder that Eddard cheated on her and she doesn't take a single second to mask her hatred towards him. An example being the scene in which everyone started preparations to leave Winterfell to check on the deserter from the Night's Watch, and she just stood there and looked Jon with disgust. The roots of her hate for him are so deep that she even kicked him out of the room when he was saying his goodbyes to the unconscious Bran. Another example for her emotional trauma is when she was sitting with Cersei at the dinner party, and they watched Robert cheat with some northern woman, and the way they both looked him with disgust just shows that they understood each other's pain, or at least they know they're in the same boat. Prediction for season 2? My prediction for Catelyn is that she loses her life, and I feel like that will be so the bond of Jon Snow and Robb can grow stronger, as I feel like while she is alive, her hatred towards Jon prevents them from growing a stronger bond as brothers. Highlight from season 1? Her talk with Jaime after they captured him. It just felt so real, raw and deserving. Robb Stark. Robb is an interesting fellow. He is the oldest child in the Stark family and he resembles his father Eddard in lots of ways. What differs him is that he kinda has an ego and feels the need to prove himself here and there, which as we know is quite different from Eddard. Robb is very loyal to those he loves, and I mean very loyal, even straight up going to war with the strongest of enemies for his family. He is very courageous, but before you gently remind me about him shaking before raising the banners, let me explain what my definition for courage is. I strongly believe true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to feel afraid and still choose to act or move forward despite that fear. That said, I really like Robb as an individual, but as a commander, oh boy do I love him. He is strict yet merciful, as he tries to avoid needless killing and he grieves for the loss of his soldiers' lives, treating them as separate individuals and not some battle unit, like most commanders do. And he is now the king of the north, so I can't wait to see more of him. Prediction for season 2? He goes completely mad. I feel like he will eventually crumble and lose his sanity because of all the pressure he has on his shoulders right now. Highlight from season 1? Raising the banners. As I mentioned earlier, courage isn't the absence of fear, but overcoming it. And what he did required a lot of courage. He took responsibility for not only his and his family's lives, but for many other people's as well. Sansa Stark. So the Stark I probably dislike the most is Sansa. I mean the others are pretty likable, so that doesn't help her at all. Sansa is the polar opposite of Arya. She embraces her feminine side, wanting to be a queen and bear Joffrey's children. Yeah, not sure about that one. She likes knitting and is apparently very good at it, even receiving compliments on her work. But she lacks the more common Stark traits like loyalty, as she basically betrayed Arya after her fight with Joffrey, straight up lying for his sake, and courage as she never stands up for anything, not even herself. She just stands there looking hurt, not even uttering a single word. Her decisions practically started a domino effect which led to Joffrey eventually ordering Eddard's execution. Let me explain what I mean by that. I strongly believe that the moment Joffrey avoided taking responsibility from the confrontation with Arya was the moment he fully awakened his god complex and started thinking that he can get away with anything. As before that, when he did something not to the preference of others, he got punished in one way or another. But this time he only got away with Robert mocking him a bit. Now imagine that. Sansa, instead of lying, did tell the truth. Joffrey would have gotten what he deserves, and his ego would have been shattered, while everyone in the room acknowledges his true cowardice, and maybe that would have made Eddard more careful, as he would have known what he's dealing with. Prediction for season 2? She continues being a punching bag. To be honest, I don't even see what she can do to change things. Highlight from season 1? Passing out at Eddard's execution. I can't even lie, that cracked me up. But on a serious note, it goes to her not breaking down after seeing Eddard's head on the spike. Even if I do dislike her, I have to give credit where it's due. Seeing your father's head on a spike and not breaking down crying and screaming is impressive by itself, but considering that Joffrey was teasing her about it makes it even more impressive. Arya Stark. The first time that we see Arya, she is part of a knitting class with Sansa, but unlike her sister, which is really talented at knitting, Arya doesn't seem interested in it at all. I think that this scene gives us a hint about what to expect from Arya throughout the season, as the way she isn't interested in knitting, she isn't really interested in her feminine side, finding real interest in swords and bows instead of dresses. Arya is a really brave child. When she sees injustice, she isn't afraid to speak up, even if the person is bigger than her physically or with a greater status. Similar to the other Starks, she is very loyal, not wanting to leave those she loves behind, whether that would be storming to the execution of her father before getting stopped by Yoren, or not wanting to leave her sword fighting teacher behind, even though the odds aren't in their favor. Prediction for season 2. My prediction is that she reunites with Jon Snow at the Night's Watch and tells him about the execution. Other than that, she trains with the Night's Watch and grows mentally and as a soldier, building a bond with Gendry, and continuing the Stark-Baratheon friendship in the process. Highlight from season 1? Her first kill. My girl didn't even flinch. Wait, I might need better wording on that. Bran Stark. Bran is the second youngest child in the Stark family and is really curious what for the life beyond the wall and wants to grasp every bit of information about it. Me too, Bran, me too. He embodies the Starks' traits and he's kinda like Robb in a way, but a much younger and immature version of him. Bran is a fighter. He wants to fight, but unfortunately, fate doesn't always favor the worthy. Prediction for season 2? He begins walking again. There is legit no way that Hodor carries him around for the rest of his life, right? Whether that would be some kind of magic or a walking gate, he will start walking again. Highlight from season 1? Catching the Lannisters. Yeah, I was obviously going to pick that one. Bro called them walking. Rickon Stark. Okay, from the little information I've gathered about Rickon from season 1, he is the youngest child of the Stark family and I strongly believe that he can see or at least sense the presence of ghosts, indicated by the scene in the burial chambers. I feel like he will be very important in the future seasons, but for now, that's kinda it. Prediction for season 2? We get an explanation on why he was really in the burial chambers. Highlight from season 1? Scaring Bran. To be honest, it scared me as well. Benjen Stark. Benjen is the brother of Eddard and the man of the Night's Watch. First of all, he treats Jon Snow as family, which not everyone does, and I strongly respect. He even refused to take Jon with him on an expedition because he wanted to protect him, stating that he wasn't ready yet. Benjen loves his family, both his biological and sworn ones. He is basically like the cool uncle everyone just can't help but love. Prediction for season 2? He is alive. I strongly believe that he sent his horse to warn his brothers about something there, but I think he hasn't kicked the bucket yet. Highlight from season 1? When he snapped at Tyrion for not respecting the Night's Watch. I felt like he did it out of respect for his brothers, which he treats as family. From their conversation, I felt like Benjen doesn't really care if someone mocks him or fights him, but he sure does care if someone goes out at somebody he loves. And that was all for the Starks. Let's continue with the Lannisters. Tywin Lannister. Tywin is the head of the Lannisters and the father of these three. From the first time that we see him, we get an idea of how much he values reputation and pride. Although he uses lines like, "A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinion of sheep," he also wanted to free Tyrion as soon as possible because him being captured tarnished their family's name. Tywin also has a preference for his children, neglecting Tyrion, calling him the lowest of the Lannisters, and saying stuff like Jaime wouldn't have allowed to be captured so easily. Well, Jaime did get captured, and when he did, Tywin immediately tried to fix his relationship with Tyrion. Overall, he seems like the person who chases his interests, whatever the cost. Prediction for season 2? He betrays his family. I feel like when he sees Joffrey, he's going to start plotting a pawn against him. Highlight from season 1? Taking the cup of wine away from Tyrion. Not gonna lie, I found that hilarious. Jaime Lannister. Jaime, or Kingslayer as most call him, is Cersei's twin brother and one of the slimiest TV characters I've seen. I'm talking prime-match kinda slimy, as he constantly teases and mocks people, even if there's no reason for it. Jaime is an elite warrior, but that doesn't seem to be enough for him, as he always finds himself in situations that require some brutality, cold-heartedness, or straight-up cheating. Some examples are how a guard pierced Eddards' leg, and I know that he got mad at the guard for ruining his duel, but he always tends to find himself in these types of dishonorable situations. But if we leave the duel with Eddard out of the equation, as that was really out of Jaime's control, he was straight-up willing to go as far as to murder a child, not even showing remorse afterwards. Prediction for season 2? He loses his life. Well, he is currently captured by the people whose life his family ruined, so yeah, I don't think Jaime would survive season 2. Highlight from season 1? Proving he isn't all bark and no bite. He told Tywin he wasn't afraid of dying, and it seems like, at least for now, that he doesn't fear the Starks or losing his life. He even teases and mocks them when he gets a chance. Cersei Lannister. Okay, I don't really know how to approach Cersei, so let's first talk about what we know about her. She is Jaime's twin sister and the mother of his child. Yeah, the Lannisters are a strange bunch, but even though Cersei is a mother herself, that doesn't stop her from being involved in Bran almost losing his life and everything that followed. Oh, and she lied to Robert about his true son, hid his identity, and disowned him. But I don't really know, as their relationship with Robert is kinda strange as well. Maybe I just need to see more of Cersei before I can give a proper opinion, so let's leave it at that for now. Prediction for season 2? She helps the Starks. I don't know why or how, but I feel like after what happened to Eddard, she would feel indebted to them in a way and help them somehow. I might be completely wrong about that one though. Highlight from season 1? Standing her ground against Robert. I felt like that was the moment she fully left Robert in her past life, shattering whatever bond they had completely. Joffrey Lannister. Next up is the deranged inbred son of Cersei and Jaime. And how can you tell that Jaime is his father? Well, he completely inherited his god complex. But unlike his father, he doesn't have the reputation or swordsmanship to back it up, as he is just an arrogant spoiled kid. But that doesn't stop him from lying and making stuff up only to benefit from the situation or to avoid taking responsibility from the suffering he has caused. As a person, well, he's terrible enough, even getting labeled a monster by some, but as a king, well, he is even worse, causing people suffering for for his own entertainment and overall being a tyrant. Prediction for season 2, he gets dethroned. Like I mentioned earlier, when Tywin sees what a monster he is and his irrational and self-centered decisions, he will start plotting a way to dethrone him and will probably succeed. Highlight from season 1? Man, do I hate the fact that I have to pick a highlight for him. My choice is him eliminating Eddard. He saw an obstacle, a potential threat and got rid of him. Tyrion Lannister. Quite possibly my favorite character from season 1, Tyrion Lannister, or the Imp, is the brother of Cersei and Jaime, but unlike them he is pretty likable. Tyrion is just a clever half-man who doesn't seem to care about anything. You try to make a clever remark about him, he snaps back with an even more clever response. You try to trick him or harm him in any way, well, he remains calm under pressure and always finds a way to get out of a bad situation with the best possible outcome for him. Apart from the incident with his first wife. And overall he isn't that bad, as he even helped Bran with the special saddle design so he can ride again and warn Jon Snow about the Night's Watch before he enlisted. Prediction for season 2? He gets betrayed by Shae. I mean, it's not insane to think that history might repeat itself, right? Highlight from season 1? I really wanted to pick the time he hit Joffrey a couple of times, but his highlight is definitely getting out of the Eyrie alive. That was against all odds basically, but he managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat. The Baratheons. Robert Baratheon. The first time we see Robert, he makes a good first impression. Friendly, joking, even mocking himself a little. But his mask quickly falls as he reveals his true colors. Robert basically cares about 4 things. Eating, drinking, whoring, and war. He's been like that since he was 16 and never grew out of it. Still talking and acting like a teenager. He's a total hypocrite as well. He constantly insists how much he misses Lyanna, which, in case you don't know, was Eddard's sister and Robert's fiancé, even blaming Eddard for burying her in a crypt instead of under the open sky. Yet later, when talking to Cersei, he admits he doesn't even remember what Lyanna looked like. You could say it's a coping mechanism, but honestly, it feels like he just uses Lyanna as an excuse to justify his behavior and mistreatment of Cersei. After visiting Lyanna's grave, instead of staying solemn, he's right back to partying, making out with another woman in front of Cersei's eyes. Later, when he talks to Eddard, he calls him his only loyal friend. But does he really treat him with respect? No, not at all. He mocks Jon Snow's mother, calling her a whore, and even if she was a whore, she's still the mother of Eddard's child. That alone deserves some respect. Robert though doesn't see it that way. Robert is just a shell of his former self. Once a strong, brave soldier, now reduced to plotting the assassination of Daenerys. Not because of what she did, but because of who she is, going straight for bloodline. And the irony, on his deathbed, he tells Eddard to leave Daenerys alone if it isn't too late, because well, it's not his problem anymore. To be fair, he has his moments when he tries to make things right. He apologizes to Eddard for not taking Arya to him, trying to calm the situation down. As a king, he only uses his power when it suits him. He doesn't care about the city's debt or people's suffering, he just wants his wine and horse. The only thing he seems truly passionate about is killing. He even loves recalling how his enemies begged for mercy. He does have humor though.
Who named you? Some half-wit with a stutter.
Half-wit with a stutter. Okay, I'll give him that one. But when it comes to treating the little man, Robert fails. His treatment of his squire Lancelot, whatever this guy is called, shows exactly what kind of man he has become. At the council, when he insists on killing Daenerys, Eddard calls him no better than the Mad King, and Robert's reaction is to threaten him to have his head on a spike. Well, Robert might be a terrible king, husband and father, but when it comes to war and killing, well, he's really good at it. Even stating that killing clears his head. That's just who he is, a man that peaked in battle, then wasted everything else. In the end, on his deathbed, he tried to make things right, but by then it was already too late. Prediction for season 2? Well, I don't think he'll be resurrected, so... Highlight from season 1? Trying to make things right on his deathbed. Even though it was already too late, he tried, and I'll give him that. If for a moment he can be a regular human being, that's worth mentioning. Renly Baratheon. Renly is the younger brother of Robert, and if he was an animal, he probably would have been a chameleon, because Snake is already taken. Renly doesn't search for solutions, he just likes to blame the people for not doing a better job, as we saw by the way he treated the City Watch's Night. He is in a gay relationship with this fellow, but is afraid to be public about it, which indicates his lack of confidence in himself, which we later see another example of when he gets told by his partner that he could be the next king, and he immediately disregards it as a joke. Renly always criticizes his brother, but does he do anything to change him or correct him? No, he's afraid to stand up to him, having only the confidence to talk behind his back. Wait, he did stand up to him once, and then he immediately left. Oh, and the thing he stood up for was people's lives, when he did nothing while they were talking about killing Daenerys and her child. Which makes me believe that he stood up to Robert that time because he was already set on the throne, even being ready to throw his brother under the bus for his goal. You can say he was really scared when he informed Eddard about Robert's accident, but even then I would argue that he couldn't finish his sentence while looking Eddard, Robert's loyal friend, in the eyes because of his lack of loyalty and honor. And when they arrive to Robert's room for his final moments, he gets kicked out because Robert wants to have a private talk with Eddard, and instead of feeling sad that he may never talk to his brother again, He got angry that he got kicked out of the room. Now don't get me wrong, Robert was a terrible human being, but Renly can at least show him some respect at his final moments. But instead of that, as Eddard leaves the room, he immediately goes to him to plot Joffrey's dethroning, who I believe everyone still knows as Robert's son. And I get that he thought that Cersei was gonna be the one ruling, but as we saw later, that wasn't really the case. Do you remember when Eddard was walking towards Joffrey in the throne room with Baelish and Varys on his sides, which might have been a reference to the scene with the Shadow Angels from Emperor's New Groove, with Baelish being the bad one and Varys the good one, which yeah, was kinda right I guess? Well, in this scene Renly was non-existent, which might have been because he's neither good or bad, he just follows his interests. Prediction for season 2, his affair gets discovered and he gets bullied for it. Here's the thing, if he was confident in himself, then he wouldn't care about people knowing, but as he is now, he will for sure care. Highlight from season 1, I guess standing up to Robert while they were hunting. Although hypocritical because of the Daenerys situation, he still took some balls to stand up to him. Gendry Baratheon. Gendry, or Blacksmith Boy, is a true son of Robert. He works in a blacksmith before eventually getting selected for the Night's Watch, like it's the NBA. I believe that his blacksmith mentor or teacher, whatever you call it, saw how the Lannisters took care of Eddard and decided that it would be better for him to leave King's Landing and go to the Night's Watch. Personality-wise, he's described as very talented and hardworking, and he's very brave, as he stood up to Eddard while he was inspecting the helmet he made, telling him that it's not for sale. Imagine it was Jaime instead of Eddard in this scene. Gendry would have needed to learn to make helmets only using one arm. Apart from all that, he protected Arya when she was getting bullied, indicated that he has a strong sense of justice. Prediction for season 2, he becomes a respectable swordsman and makes his vow towards the Night's Watch. Highlight from season 1, protecting Arya. At least one Baratheon managed to protect a Stark. Targaryens. Viserys Targaryen. Another character I really dislike is Viserys. I mean, to offer your sister to the leader of the Savages so you can rule their army is one thing, but to state that you would let his 40,000 man army do her if it means you rule them is borderline insane. But what can you really expect of him? He thinks everyone is indebted to him in some way or another and treats them like they are a lower life form. Prediction for season 2, the same one as Robert and Eddard. Highlight from season 1, getting his golden crown. I mean, achieving your goal is pretty respectable. Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys is one of the few remaining Targaryens and the currency her brother used in his trade with the Dothraki. Jokes aside, she is just a girl trying her best. Well, the trade does eventually happen and she becomes the wife of Khal Drogo, who isn't the type to wait around, as he sadly violates her soon after. I believe that was the moment she developed some sort of Stockholm syndrome, which is basically feeling affection towards your captor. But as we know, adaptability is humanity's superpower, and Daenerys is no different, as she full-on embraces the Dothraki's way of living, learning their language, doing their rituals, trying her hardest to become one of them, and when she fully embraces being the Khaleesi, she starts to command authority to the Dothrakis, which just shows her progress and growth, as she goes from the little girl who does everything her brother tells her, without thinking if it is good, bad, or reasonable in the first place, to the Khaleesi who commands authority and respect. Unfortunately, her affair with Khal Drogo doesn't end in the best way possible, resulting in a forbidden blood ritual, some tears, and a pillow fight. But it all works out in the end, as she now is the proud mother of 3 fire-breathing puppies. Prediction for season 2, she raises her puppies. Well, everyone needs a training arc, so highlight from season 1, walking into the fire. Both metaphorically and physically, she completely left her previous life behind for her new one, saying goodbye to her beloved and embracing being the mother of dragons. I feel like Daenerys was like a bird locked in a cage and now she's completely free. I really wanted to make the dragoons joke, but I won't. That's how you know I've matured. Other important characters. Baelish, Varys and Pycelle. Okay, I think I'm supposed to do Baelish, Varys and Pycelle together because of the way they interact and complement each other as characters. So Baelish, Varys and Pycelle are basically the bad, the good and the indifferent. What I meant earlier about them complementing each other was that you get a stronger impression of each one of them by comparing them to the others. When you see Baelish, you clearly see the bad. Then when you look at Varys, his good side stands out even more in contrast. Meanwhile, Pycelle's passivity becomes even more obvious when placed next to the schemes of the other two, highlighting how he just follows whoever is in power without truly caring. Peter Baelish. Baelish, or the Snake, was one of the key reasons why Eddard ended up like a candy apple. He is clever and clearly ambitious. Just the way he was looking at the throne showed that he wanted to rule the 7 kingdoms, even if that was never really going to happen. And I'm pretty sure he was practically drooling when he heard that Eddard was coming to King's Landing to be the hand of the king. Prediction for season 2? He loses his life. Maybe from Catelyn, maybe from Robb, I don't really know, but for sure he will get what he deserves. Highlight from season 1? Making Eddard stay in King's Landing. Eddard was this close to going back to Winterfell, but Baelish tricked him into staying in King's Landing, which resulted in, him getting pierced, locked in a dungeon, becoming a candy apple. I guess well played, Baelish. Varys ain't that bad, right? I mean, he went to Eddard to give him water and such. Overall, he's a bit shady, plotting something constantly, but at least for now, he hasn't done anything that bad. Prediction for season 2? He gets exiled. I don't know, I just feel like he will leave King's Landing. Highlight from season 1? Trolling Baelish in the throne room. Okay, it was kinda funny. Pycelle. Well, about Pycelle, if the king says jump, Pycelle is the first one to ask how high. He just follows orders, that's basically all there is to it. Prediction for Season 2, he loses his life. Well, he's kinda old. Highlight from Season 1, I really have no clue. Trust me guys, I tried. But he just doesn't do anything out of the ordinary or to be worthy of a highlight. Robin Arryn. First of all, I want to say that there is no way, and I mean legit no way, Joffrey is inbred and this what isn't. He screams out of nowhere, he wants to see people suffer, he's just a really strange kid. Maybe that's thanks to the fact that his mother still breastfeeds him at... Wait, how old was he again? He's 9? Prediction for Season 2? Hopefully he doesn't appear again. Highlight from Season 1? Not making a scene after his mother refused to breastfeed him. Yeah, that might be his best moment of the season. Lisa Arryn. The sister of Catelyn and the mother of Robin, who we covered a few seconds ago, Lisa is completely insane. From breastfeeding her 9-year-old child to acting paranoid all the time, which might be because of her husband's death, but if I remember correctly, her husband's death happens relatively early in the story, so that can be the reason she still breastfeeds her son, right? Right? I really don't want to get into detail about the Arryns, they are just completely crazy. Let's continue. Prediction for Season 2? The same as Robin's. Highlight from Season 1? Locking Tyrion in the Sky Cells. She got bro stuck in the most bizarre cell ever. Sandor Clegane. Sandor Clegane first appears during Robert's visit to Winterfell, where he gets a lot of disrespect from his superiors, which becomes a frequent occasion throughout the show. But he stays loyal nonetheless. Later, we learn that he was the one who took care of the butcher's son after the Arya Joffrey incident.
Good soldiers follow orders.
We also discover the tragic reason behind his deformed face. When he was younger, his brother pressed his head into burning coals, leaving permanent scars. Apart from that, he stood up for Rhaenys' lover. Though it wasn't a king's order, yet when he heard Robert's voice, he instantly stopped and obeyed, showing that although he has some free will,
Good soldiers follow orders.
interestingly enough, he seemed uneasy after acting on his own, even if it was to save someone else's life. Prediction for Season 2? I really want to believe that he might betray Joffrey for the greater good, but I just don't see it happening. Although we got glimpses of hope that he might have some free will, man's way too dedicated to following orders to do it, so my prediction is that he will continue to do so. Highlight from Season 1? Him protecting Rhaenys' lover. Even if just for a moment he acted on his own, considering his character, that's definitely a step in the right direction. Shae. Shae is a prostitute who doesn't like to talk about her past and quickly gets angry when Tyrion makes harsh remarks about her mother and father. She's clever, witty and has her own strong opinions, making her very different from the typical Game of Thrones whore, who just obeys and takes everything. Despite her profession, Shae carries a certain dignity and isn't afraid to stand up for herself. She shows genuine care and interest in Tyrion, feeling bad for him after his stories, and after he admits that he was young and foolish, she tells him that he still is. This demonstrates that she has her own moral judgment and doesn't blindly accept others' behavior. At the same time, there's a subtle mystery around her motives. Is there a chance that she was sent by Tywin, similar to how Tyrion's marriage was staged? Overall though, Shae doesn't seem like a bad person. She seeks the truth, even if it hurts, stands firm in her beliefs, and clearly has her own moral code. By the end of the season, her personality is still somewhat mysterious, but she comes across as someone trustworthy and semi-honorable, which sets her apart from others in her line of work. Prediction for Season 2? She betrays Tyrion. Come on, it's just too good to be true, considering that it was even revealed that Tyrion got betrayed by a whore once already. Highlight from Season 1? Standing up to Tyrion for his harsh guesses about her family. Let's be honest, he deserved it. You don't just attack someone else's family like that. Theon Greyjoy. Theon is essentially the Stark family's punching bag. Never truly accepted as one of them, even though he desperately tries to be. He wants that acceptance so badly that he's willing to do almost anything to prove himself. Clear example being the scene in which the Direwolf pups get discovered. As soon as Eddard says that they won't survive, implementing that they should be taken care of, not even a second later, Theon already had his dagger in his hand. The constant disrespect by the family towards him gets noticed by others as well, and it even encourages them to treat him arrogantly. A prime example comes when Tyrion leaves Winterfell. As Theon bids him farewell, Tyrion mocks him by calling Robb his master and labeling Theon as nothing more than Stark's Wake. Even the whore he visits stones him for being a Wake. It's a role he can't seem to escape, and when Robb reminds him that his duty isn't truly his because it's not his house, it really hurt him. Still, beneath the arrogance and flaws, there's a genuine loyalty and love for Robb. When Eddard was attacked by Jaime, Theon got visibly upset as if Eddard was his own father. Later, when Robb calls the banners, Theon lights up with joy, proud to fight alongside his brother for House Stark. One of the strongest examples of his bond with Robb comes during the scene with the captured Lannister spy. Everyone objects to Robb's decision to let the man go, but Theon stays silent. I believe this wasn't out of fear, it was respect and love for Robb, like that of a younger brother. That said, Theon isn't exactly a saint outside the Stark circle. After losing his favorite whore, he starts making moves on their savage female captive before being stopped. His arrogance and recklessness can get the better of him, but still his loyalty to Robb shines through. When Jaime Lannister is captured, Theon is basically on demon hours, like prime King Von, practically glued to Jaime with murderous intent, showing that behind the mockery and humiliation, he is protective of the people he truly cares about, or he's just a psychopath. Prediction for Season 2? He betrays the Starks. I feel like from the way they've been treating him that Theon would betray the Starks. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I feel like he will eventually snap. The disrespect towards him is just too much. There were even moments when I was watching and thinking, don't they see that he's trying? Why are they being so unreasonably rude towards him? Hey, I really hope I'm wrong wrong though. Highlight from season 1, saving Rob and Bran by sniping the Savage. Even though he was disrespected and neglected by Rob, he still came back to save them. And then Rob even dared to question him, straight up snapping at him, asking if he lost his mind and what if he missed. That just shows how little faith Rob has in him. But Jon didn't get angry at Rob, he just felt disappointed and hurt from his words. Yoren is honestly just a chill guy. As a man of the Night's Watch, he's responsible for finding recruits, but he also knows how to enjoy himself here and there. Even Tyrion calls him a man with a sense of humor. And from the Imp, that's a lot. Yoren avoids unnecessary trouble and doesn't take sides without good reason. Like when Tyrion was seized by Catelyn at the inn, Yoren stayed calm and didn't act rashly. Later, after parting ways with Tyrion, he reached King's Landing to look for recruits. He met with Eddard and got his permission to gather men, but his real reason for seeking Eddard specifically was to inform him that Catelyn had taken Tyrion hostage. This makes me think Yoren's loyalty to Benjen runs deep, since he went out of his way to protect his sworn brothers' family on more than one occasion. During Eddard's Candy Apple transformation, Eddard stumbles into Yoren and shouts Baywar, clearly signaling his trust in him. That leads to Yoren stopping Arya on her way to her father, which in my opinion saved her life, because Joffrey surely would have wanted revenge. From that moment on, Yoren takes care of Arya, disguising her as a boy to travel with him to the Night's Watch, even though the order is male only. He cuts her hair, signaling a new beginning, and instructs her how to behave so she doesn't get herself in trouble. Whether Yoren does all of this because he's simply a good man or because he feels obligated out of loyalty to his sworn brother Benjen is up to debate. Personally, I believe he's one of the good ones, but we'll see for sure in the upcoming seasons. Prediction for season 2? He trains Arya and Gendry. Well, he can't just abandon them now. Highlight from season 1? Saving Arya. He's taking a real gamble on her. Hopefully no one notices that she's a girl at the Night's Watch. Jon Snow. If Tyrion isn't my favorite character, then it's definitely Jon Snow. Although a good boy, he's completely hated by Catelyn, and I mean fully despised. But I don't think he ever hated her back. For example, when he went to bid farewell to Bran and she basically kicked him out, he later told Robb that she was being really nice to him. Jon's got a really strong sense of justice. He protected Sam from getting bullied and even became friends with him when nobody else wanted to talk to him. He's the type who acts on what he feels is right. Call it reckless, call it irrational, but he does it without hesitation. A perfect example is when he found out about Eddard and straight up tried to leave the Night's Watch, which is obviously forbidden. The only reason he stayed was because his brothers reminded him that they're his new family. And that's the thing, Jon is a family man, even as a bastard, and he needed to hear the word family to stay grounded. Even his wolf feels symbolic. The fact that he got his wolf after all the other Stark children already received theirs, for me feels like he's kind of a Stark, but not all the way. Still, his bond with the wolf is just as strong, which shows he does belong there, even if not fully by name. There may be a reason why Theon doesn't have a wolf, and even when Alistair Thorne, this guy, threatened to make his life miserable if he kept protecting Sam, Jon didn't back down. He knows what's right and he's not afraid to do it, even if there are consequences. That's what sets him apart. He's not just a Stark bastard, he's someone destined for something greater. Prediction for season 2? He leaves the Night's Watch. He showed glimpses of rebellion already, and I feel like there will eventually be a situation which will give him no other choice but to leave. Highlight from season 1? Protecting Sam. A great man shows his greatness by the way he treats the little man. Well, in this case not so little, but you get my point. While everyone was bullying Sam, Jon Snow stood up for him, which was pretty admirable. Somewhat Tarly. Although Sam joins the story a bit later, the self-proclaimed chubby coward quickly becomes friends with Jon Snow, and they grow a bond as brothers, even making their vows together. Overall, Sam's a good lad, and a loyal friend of Jon, so I can't wait to see more of him. Prediction for season 2? He leaves the Night's Watch with Jon. Let's be real, if Jon leaves, Sam is coming with him. Highlight from season 1? Going after Jon to stop him from leaving. Considering that he himself admits that he's a coward, that was pretty courageous to say the least. And we're done with the characters. I was thinking about covering these guys as well, but I don't feel like that they are important enough, at least not yet. So if they become more important, I'll cover them later in the series. Themes and symbols. Hot and cold. No, not the Katy Perry song. The contrast. In Game of Thrones, the colder and snowier, the warmer the people. The warmer and sunnier, the colder the people. The Starks, who live in the coldest of temperatures, with their motto even being, winter is coming, have the warmest hearts, while the Lannisters, who live in luxury and warmth, have the coldest hearts. The Starks even show mercy to their enemies, while the Lannisters use every dirty trick in the book, straight up willing to go as far as to endanger a child's life, with the intention of taking it away, only because the child saw something he shouldn't have, the dead dire wolf. You probably remember the scene where the Stark kids discover their precious little wolf pups, but you might have missed the deeper meaning behind it. The dead dire wolf could actually symbolize Eddard, and his death later in the show. Here's what I mean. Right after they find the pups, Eddard says something along the lines of, they won't survive on their own, but if we see Eddard as the dead dire wolf, then those pups represent his children. And guess what? Just like the wolf pups found someone to help them survive, that being the Stark kids, so did the Stark kids. Robb had Catelyn, Sansa had Joffrey. Well, she's safe as long as he doesn't completely lose his mind. Arya had Yoren, Bran had Hodor, and that one lady whose name I don't know. Rickon's one would be Bran, and Jon Snow's one would be Jeor Mormont, who, just like his direwolf, he found later. And here's the thing, they wouldn't have needed to rely on these people if Eddard had always been there to protect them, so in a way, his death actually forced them to grow. Wolves as a sense of self. The wolves of the Stark family represent something much deeper than pets. Each puppy reflects their owner's sense of self. When Sansa lied during the incident with Joffrey, she betrayed her house's most prominent traits, honesty, loyalty and honor. She didn't get punished, nor did Arya who caused it. Instead, Instead, Sansa's wolf got punished. For me, that indicates that Sansa's sense of self was taken away that day, and she remained a punching bag for the rest of the season. Arya's wolf ran away, but she didn't betray any of the Stark's traits, so her puppy lived, and she kept her sense of self. Love versus pride. So this one's kinda tricky because there's a chance the Lannisters actually do love each other. Nah, who am I kidding? While the Starks genuinely love and protect each other, the Lannisters are a different kind of gravy. Just imagine that Bran or Robb got captured and held captive the way Tyrion did. I highly doubt the reason for saving them would be so their family name doesn't get tarnished, but that's kinda the narrative. While the Starks have a deep bond within the family, the Lannisters mainly do it if it benefits them. Well guys, that's all for this video covering season 1. I had a great time making it, although it took some time. And the fact that we can come back to it later, after season 2, to see how my takes aged makes it even better. I really hope you enjoyed it and didn't get too mad at the things I said. Love you all, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my precious white monsters. After having a pretty good time with season 1, you just know we have to cover the rest of the seasons as well. So buckle up and let's get ready to rumble! New world building from season 2. Towns and structures. Cart, whatever, however you pronounce it. Kart is like a desert mirage, a city proclaimed to be the richest in the world, with the richest of people, only to reveal itself as a fool's paradise, north of the wall. But my problem is that I know the best is yet to come, as there is legit no way that the most insane piece of world building isn't on the other side of the wall. Trust me, there is a way. It's basically a frozen tundra, with nothing there apart from savages and maybe trolls or giants. Dragonstone. Currently, Stannis' heretic castle, we get a couple of glimpses of it at night. Why do I feel like Daenerys will eventually take it? Harrenhal, a once impenetrable castle ruined by dragonfire. Now Harrenhal is basically a prison used to extract information by interrogating and torturing prisoners. But it looks cool nonetheless. The Pike. Wait, wrong thought. Now we're talking. I don't have much to say about this one, it's cool. Anyways, creatures. Trolls or giants? The thing that took Craster's son seems quite tall to me. Maybe Hodor is one as well? We'll see about that one. Necromancers. Cart didn't just open its gates to a beautiful but fake city. It opened them to magic as well. This pale looking fella could actually cast spells. I don't really know if we'll see any more necromancers along the way, but it definitely felt like a breath of fresh air. Witches. Well, I don't really know how else to label Melisandre if not a witch. We'll talk about her in a bit, but I just want to say drinking poison and giving birth to shadows isn't exactly normal. Shapeshifters? I was going to mention Jaqen, but it seems I can't label him as a separate character, because well, he can shapeshift into other people, or maybe he is many people at once? I don't really know what to think of him, so I will label him a shapeshifter for now. Savages. In the first video, I mistook the savages for the Dothraki. Now we get a glimpse of the real savages. They're basically regular human beings. They speak the common tongue with a bit of dialect, live in a frozen tundra, but they're just like any normal folk. A little more ferocious, but yeah. Plot points. Jon Snow falls in love. Something I did not expect, as in season 1, Jon was pretty much against the idea of being in love. Now, why is that important and in need of separate talking point? First of all, this love resulted in him practically killing off some of his brothers from the Night's Watch, because they went looking for him after he disappeared. But other than that, it was strange to say the least, seeing the character that chased woman the least being the center of a love affair. Although I have to say it wasn't really initiated by him, he still got caught in it. Tyrion Lannister, I wasn't really familiar with your game. Quite possibly the MVP of the season, Tyrion Lannister. He delivers what can only be described as a masterclass, and somehow does it while still being a genuinely good fella. First of all, Shae didn't actually betray him, as I predicted in the season 1 video, and I'd even argue that she was his biggest supporter throughout the season, always standing by him when literally no one else did. Props to her for that. And man, the way he shuts down the other Lannisters, straight up mental bullying. He might be half their size, but he's twice as smart. This season alone, he had like 5 private conversations with Cersei, and I swear she was close to tears in every single one of them. When it came to the war, let's be honest, we all knew Joffrey wasn't leading anything, while the king was hiding for his life. The lowest of the Lannisters became the coach factor. Tyrion rallied the troops, led the counterattack, and brought enough time for Tywin's forces to arrive to save them all. And yet somehow he always survives, even when he gets knocked out mid-battle, he still finds a way. When that kind of miracle happens once, it's luck. But when it keeps happening over and over again, you start thinking maybe Tyrion actually puts himself in these insane situations where luck just happens to favor him, and that's why he keeps living. But after all of that, after literally saving everyone, he gets no recognition. How can everyone let themselves be saved by the lowest of the Lannisters? His family completely dismisses his efforts, and if I'm not mistaken, they even strip him of his position. With Pycelle giving him coins like he's some kind of a pitiful beggar. Like bro, man saved the city and that's the thing he gets? Catelyn lets Jaime go. And remember how I said in the season 1 video that she sometimes goes overboard with her emotions? Yeah, well, this season she completely loses her mind. And honestly, I kinda get it. She hasn't seen her kids in like forever, and with Theon capturing Winterfell and putting Bran and Rickon in danger, any mother will do whatever it takes to protect her children. But letting Jaime go, that was not only the dumbest decision she could have possibly made, she didn't even discuss it with Robb, who, in case you have forgotten, is not only the commander of their army, but her son as well. And because of her recklessness, she puts him in an awful position both strategically and as a figure of authority towards his people. The dog in Sandor Clegane. Turns out good soldiers don't always follow orders. I did not see this one coming, but the dog had enough. He straight up refuses to fight and starts shit-talking the King's Guard and Joffrey right in front of his face, and he does it right when they needed him the most. Such a sweet moment. Rob on Demon Hours. Okay, Season 2 Rob is completely on Demon Hours. Crushing their forces in battle wasn't enough for him. My boy decided to tease them, sending them unacceptable demands and such, which to be honest worked quite well, as it visibly triggered Cersei. Then he straight up breaks his vow. When he first raised the banners, he used the vows his bannermen made to Eddard as a reason why they should follow him. But now that it's his turn, he completely disregards the whole vow thing and just breaks it like it's nothing. I mean, I get it, nobody wants to marry one of Frey's daughters, but still. And then there's the part where he puts Catelyn, his own mother, under surveillance, like she's some kind of a criminal. He's fully moving like a man who trusts nobody. To be fair, he's been betrayed a few times, but locking your own mother up, that's straight up wicked. Then he states that he's gonna behead Tion himself, and yeah, this one's kinda understandable, but still, the fact that he specifically wants Tion alive so he can do it himself could mean two things basically. Either he feels obligated because he's the one who let Tion go to the pike in the first place, or his hatred is just out of control right now and he wants the satisfaction of doing it personally. Rob in the second season was just moving like Westeros was 63rd, the saddest character in the series. So Tion betrays the Starks, hoping to finally get recognized by his father, but oh boy does it backfire. Just moments later, we see that his sister is actually more of a man than he'll ever be, and far more respected. First of all, he basically returns to serve the people who've mocked him since the moment he set foot there, then comes the beheading and him trying to prove he's someone he's clearly not. When he does it, he doesn't prove strength or authority, he proves desperation. He shows everyone around him that he'll do anything for acceptance, even kill someone who had nothing to do with any of it. And honestly, I don't remember Roderick ever saying a bad word about Tion in the entire series till that point.
But keep talking and I'll...
Well, he didn't say a bad word, but even after all that, he still doesn't earn any respect. Who would have thought? People see right through him. They realize how desperate he is for approval, and now they know they can get anything out of him if they just play it right. And when they're finally done laughing at his improvised spectacles, they just knock him out and drag him like he's some sort of a broken toy that ran out of batteries and needs to recharge. In a way, Tion made the jump only to realize the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But by the time he figured it out, it was already too late. Wasted potentials. Yoren. On one side, I get why they had to kill him off considering where the story was headed, but still, I just wanted to see him train Arya and Gendry, even for a bit. You could tell he was more than capable as a fighter, and he was really starting to become like a father figure to Arya. Such a shame, man. Renly. Okay, this one I just don't get. My guy builds a 100,000 man army, gets labeled a king, he has this massive go up, and then he gets like, what, 2 minutes of screen time before being assassinated by a shadow? I've said previously that I just don't like Renly, but this was just straight up disappointing. He has more sex scenes than actual plot scenes. Somewhat Tarly. While Renly just disappointed me, this one actually made me mad. Although he isn't currently dead, his situation isn't exactly bright. In season 2, Sam isn't that likable chubby coward we kinda rooted for before, he's just annoying. In season 1, whenever he showed up, I was invested and actually enjoyed watching his scenes. But now he's straight up unbearable. Every time he talks, I'm just sitting there using every bit of self-control I have to not skip the scene. New characters. Stannis Baratheon. Nah, I'm sure it's the genes at this point. I thought Robert was bad, but Stannis is a full-on sociopath. Like, look me in the eyes and tell me this is the face of a man who regrets anything in his life and wouldn't do it all over again. Keep this dude locked up and far away from anything remotely dangerous. Melisandre. Then we've got Melisandre, who I'm convinced is a witch. She's basically Stannis' heretic new girlfriend, and honestly, they make the perfect mentally ill duo. Nothing more to say about them. Davos Seaward. Now, Davos Seaward, the right hand of Stannis, he actually gets quite a bit of screen time, but he doesn't really do anything that interesting. Most of the time he just agrees with Stannis, and when he doesn't, even when he knows he's right, he still goes soft about it, and in Game of Thrones, if you're right, you better act like you're right. Otherwise, no one's gonna listen to you. Ygritte. Then there's Ygritte, a straight up savage. Jon meets her during the expedition north of the wall, and she instantly manages to both seduce and capture him. Jungle Gap, I guess. Bronn. Okay, not technically a new character, but I didn't cover him in the first video, so here we go. Tyrion's right-hand man, at least for a while. Seems like he got fired from the City Watch gig, even though he's clearly more than capable of doing it. If I had to sum up Bronn in one sentence, it will probably be, if there's enough gold, he'll do anything. Marjorie Tyrell. She's basically the new Sansa. That's pretty much it for now. Horus Tyrell, a Rhaenys' lover who turns vengeful after the whole Shadow Assassin incident and ends up teaming with the Lannisters. The same Lannisters that Renly absolutely despised. Yeah, I don't know either. Well guys, that's all I have prepared for today. I tried to cover the more interesting and important elements of this season, unlike the previous video which I completely went overboard with. And yeah, to sum the second season in one sentence, everyone just completely lost their minds. I think season 1 is better than season 2, but I'm going to give season 2 the same rating as season 1, only because of this scene, in which the White Walkers rise and march towards the wall. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my sweet Canon minions. It's time for Game of Thrones Season 3, and man, these ones are right. So without further introductions, let's jump straight into it. New world building from Season 3 plus characters. Creatures. Giants. Alright, so apparently giants are real, and this dude we see, mass towering over Hodor like it's nothing. Works. These guys can basically take control over animals, and as we saw with Bran, maybe even humans, if they are gifted enough. Characters. Jojen Reed. Jojen is basically Bran's new friend, guiding him on his journey to follow his visions. I'm calling it. There's something fishy with him. He just knows too much. Mira Reed. Jojen's bodyguard, basically she's the muscle and Jojen's the brains. Solid duo, cover each other's weaknesses. Mance Raider. Leader of the savages, tough, commanding, knows how to handle his people. An interesting individual to say the least. Brienne Tart. Catelyn's bodyguard, and from what we can tell, she might have feelings for Jaime. Plot points. The Brotherhood. You guys remember Stannis' witch girlfriend? Well, she's not alone. She's got friends. Or at least other heretic followers of the same god. I still don't fully get the whole god of light thing, but from what we've seen, this god actually has the power to back up the talk, bringing people back to life, and if Melisandre's leeches really do work, with the right sacrifices, he can apparently assassinate people too. But man, the Word of Light has completely taken over Stannis. He's not thinking straight anymore. Wanting to sacrifice Gendry, that's just insane. And it's not like Gendry is a random person, he's family. The only family he has left after the passing of Renly and Robert. I don't know about this god, but he definitely knows how to drive people crazy. Jaime Lannister metamorphosis. Maybe the most important character development this season is Jaime's. He basically makes a full 180 from the arrogant, smug bastard we knew into someone you can actually feel for. It's like watching an ugly larvae turn into a beautiful butterfly. So how did we get here? Let's start with his escape. If I remember right, when Catelyn freed him, Jaime was still acting like a douche, teasing her, mocking her, saying random crap just because he could, but she still let him go. And I think that moment, that one drop of kindness, was what started the whole change. Like the first time someone showed him mercy, he finally saw a glimpse of what being human actually feels like. So Catelyn sends Brienne to escort him to King's Landing, trusting her to keep him alive, and during the whole trip, Jaime's being... well, Jaime. Talking non-stop, trying to escape, throwing jokes when literally no one's laughing. But under all that, you can tell something's changing. He's starting to respect her, maybe even like her a bit. Then they get caught by one of Rob's bannermen, and that's when the fun stops. Their situation isn't exactly ideal, as the Northerners aren't welcoming at all. But Jaime stands out. He lies for Brienne's sake and actually saves her from what could have been a really terrible situation. Unfortunately, not every good deed gets rewarded. Jaime overstays his welcome and tries to weasel his way out of captivity, which leads to him losing his sword hand, the very hand he relied on for everything. This completely breaks him mentally. The next day, as they travel to Harrenhal with their new friends, we can see that Jaime has completely lost his will to live. He doesn't care what happens to him or anything else, he's just a shell of his former self. But when he's at his lowest, practically ready to give up entirely, Brienne snaps him out of it, reminding him who he is and why he shouldn't give up yet. From that moment, I think either Jaime starts to like her, though I mostly doubt it because we know who his real love is, or he realizes that without his fighting hand, there's no longer a need for unnecessary violence. You could argue that his sword hand was like a chain, locking him into the reputation of being a formidable fighter, something he always felt he had to protect. Now that it's gone, the pressure to prove himself disappears too. During their talk, he admits he's always been a swordsman. It's the only thing he was ever truly good at. Saying this shows he wanted to be the best, not because he genuinely desired it, but to prove to himself that he could. Now that his hand is gone, that need to prove anything disappears as well. After arriving at Harrenhal, Jaime strikes a deal with Bolton and manages to get out alive and escorted to King's Landing. At this point, he's practically free, but he remembers Brienne won't get the same treatment as him, so he risks his own safety to go back and rescue her, which, yeah, leads to him fighting a bear. Sometimes that's just how it goes. Both he and Brienne manage to escape the bear and return safely to King's Landing. When they enter, someone even mistakes Jaime for a peasant. To me, that just shows he's no longer that noble highborn anymore. He's just a regular human with regular human emotions. In this way, he completes the metamorphosis of his growth, returning to the place where it all began for him, but as a changed and matured man, giving a new beginning to the new version of himself. The Crow Massacre. Another thing that completely caught me off guard was the whole Night's Watch massacre at Craster's Keep. Like bro, I get it. They've been freezing, starving, watching the dead rise. Tension was bound to explode at some point. But a full-on bloodbath between brothers? That was definitely not on my bingo card. Seeing them just lose it, turning on each other, on Mormont, on everything they stood for, was honestly brutal, and the worst part, it leads to the death of Jorah Mormont himself. The man literally kept them alive this long and that's how it ends. It's completely insane, and I can't wait to see Jon's reaction when he finds out about this mess. The Starks can't catch a break. The Catelyn Jaime domino effect. Okay, let's break down every step of this domino effect, just so we can see how one single decision can cause absolute chaos. So as I mentioned before, Catelyn letting Jaime go was straight up insane, but even I didn't expect this much fallout from it. First of all, it pissed off the Karstarks, and honestly, rightfully so. It was total injustice to them. With no Jaime to take out their anger out on, they went and killed the Lannister captive kids, which first of all is completely inhumane, and second of all, a literal war crime. That of course enrages Robb, and leads to him executing Lord Karstark himself. But you know what happens when you cut off the head of a house? They bounce. The Karstarks straight up abandon him. Now Robb's left with fewer men, less power and no leverage. So what does he do? He tries to fix it the only way he can, by making a new deal with Walder Frey. And at first it seems chill. Frey just wants Robb's uncle to marry one of his daughters, since Robb already broke his words by marrying Talisa. Reasonable, right? Yeah, no. The wedding turns into one of the most sad, brutal and gut-wrenching scenes I have ever watched. As Catelyn, Talisa rob his unborn son and pretty much his entire army gets slaughtered. And you think in her last moments Catelyn would, I don't know, find peace or maybe pray or something, but no, she decides to murder a child. A completely innocent one at that, before getting her throat slit. Sansa Lannister. Well, Sansa's misfortune continues, or maybe fortune because Tyrion is definitely a better candidate for marriage than Joffrey. So yeah, she kind of dodged the bullet, but don't let the fact that Tyrion is going to marry her fool you into thinking she's safe from Joffrey's bullying. Far from it. He still wants to torment her, even going so far as to say he'll serve her Rob's head at dinner. Yeah, at this point it's safe to assume that Joffrey has a thing for using heads as a torture method. Bran follows his dreams. This season is very Bran heavy. Following his visions from Winterfell to the Wall, Bran decides what's next for him after the whole Winterfell mess. He's going to follow his dreams. I guess that's where the metaphor comes from. His journey actually goes pretty smoothly at first, and he meets Jojen and his sister. They're super helpful and guide Bran on his path, and their party keeps growing closer, but it doesn't last long as Osha leaves with Rickon to get him somewhere safe. But Bran and the gang keep moving, deciding to stay the night at a seemingly haunted castle, though the ghosts look kinda chubby. Yeah, it's Sam, who after realizing that Bran is actually Jon's brother, shows him a secret passage to go to the other side of the wall. Honestly, I have no clue how they're planning on dealing with the White Walkers. Hodor and Mira are basically the only ones capable of fighting, and call me crazy, but I don't see them taking on 100 White Walkers at once. Although Sam did give them a couple of pieces of dragon glass, so maybe that would help. Technically, you could argue Bran might possess the White Walkers and make them fight each other one by one, while the rest of the party protects him, but yeah, that's probably never going to happen. Still, it's going to be interesting to follow his journey. Arya finds her new dad. After all the tragedies Arya's been through, just when we think she might finally reunite with her family, the Red Wedding happens. Yeah, it's mega unfortunate. All of this happening to a child, tragic doesn't even cover it. But hey, if there's a silver lining, it's that Sandor Clegane isn't that bad of a guy. Sure, he's a bit crazy, a killer and kind of terrifying, but he helps Arya when she needs someone the most. Honestly, Sandor might even turn into a father figure for her. Not gonna lie, I'm starting to actually like him. From betraying Joffrey to having Arya's back, I just hope he keeps showing this side of him more and more. Theon's damnation. Theon's storyline just keeps getting darker and darker. He's still being tortured, like, brutally. Though at least it seems he will get rescued soon, but this torture, it's next level. He basically loses his, let's say, dignity, and at this point I don't even know if he deserves it or not. Yeah, he did some stupid stuff, really stupid stuff, and he clearly regrets it, but what's happening to him right now just feels like overkill. By the last time we see him this season, he's just empty. No spark left, no pride, nothing. Begging to be killed. Honestly, I still stand by what I said before. Theon is the saddest character in the entire show, though Arya and Sansa are catching up pretty fast, so who knows, maybe he'll lose the title soon. Jon Snow betrays the Savages. Turns out love isn't enough to stop our boy Jon Snow. Man straight up betrays the Savages and goes completely 1v9. Now, don't get me wrong, I genuinely think he loved Ygritte. You can see it in the way he looks at her, in the silence between them, but deep down, he just can't give his heart to something he knows isn't right. And yeah, leaving her, that probably hurt more than anything he's ever felt before. But he still does what most people would call objectively right. Then again, what even is objectively right? At the end of the day, life's all about perspective. Maybe you agree with him, maybe you just wanted to see how their little savage affair would go. Either way, something tells me this story between them isn't quite over yet. Daenerys propaganda. Not gonna lie, I'm actually starting to kinda like Daenerys, but honestly, I feel like the show is pushing us to like her. Like she's the only one doing pure good out there. She's freeing slaves, saving people, speaking about justice and freedom, and sure, that's cool, but at this point, it almost feels like a propaganda. That's why I'm calling this part Daenerys propaganda, because almost every season ends with her doing something huge. Well, except for season 2, but come on, they couldn't really put her over the White Walkers, right? Still, she's becoming a real problem, in a good way and a bad way. You can feel that her influence is growing, her army is getting stronger, and her dragons are actually starting to look like actual threats. She'll probably get her throne one day, no question about that. But for now, there's a much bigger threat moving in the shadows, one that doesn't care about thrones, titles, or bloodlines. So the real question is, when that time comes, will she help or will she just keep building her empire while the rest of the world burns? Tywin Lannister, the man who makes the king bow. Now we finally get a real glimpse of who's actually pulling the strings in the Lannister family, and damn, do we get a good look at it. Not Tyrion, not Cersei, not even Joffrey, no one says no to Tywin Lannister. Yeah, Tyrion might be the smartest, Cersei might be the slimiest, when Jaime's gone of course, and Joffrey might be the most deranged, but none of them can do a thing if Tywin doesn't allow it. His words aren't suggestions, they're laws. Tyrion doesn't want to marry Sansa? Tywin doesn't care. Joffrey doesn't like the way Tyrion talks to him? Tywin doesn't care. Cersei doesn't want to marry Varys. Guess what? Tywin still doesn't care. He commands respect and authority like no other. Even if he plays dirty sometimes, it genuinely feels like no one can stand up to him. Even Tyrion, the same guy who isn't afraid to talk back to Joffrey, a literal monster, carefully measures every word when he's around Tywin. White Walkers are killable. So Dragonglass, which if I remember correctly is basically obsidian, can actually kill the White Walkers. And after I went on about how Sam was wasted potential in the previous video, he completely shuts me up. Our favorite stepdad becomes the first person in the entire series to kill a White Walker. Yeah, he didn't really know it would work, but hey, a win's a win. Another season, another video. I'm sticking to the short and sweet vibe this time, none of that long form stuff, because honestly it just works better. This season, easily the best one so far. I'm giving it a juicy 9.5 out of 10, and I'm hoping the next one tops it. So so I can finally give Game of Thrones a proper 10 out of 10. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my little Lego Millennium Falcon sets. It's time for season 4 and there's a lot to cover, so let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Ramsay, Bolton plus Reek. So first of all, we need to introduce two new characters. The first one might look a bit familiar as he's basically the discount version of someone we've sorta seen before. Meet Reek. He's kind of the Game of Thrones version of Dobby, but to free him you need something a bit more extreme than a sock. And the other one is Ramsay, who is probably my favorite character right now. He's just mentally ill, completely mentally ill. From turning Tion into his deranged servant who follows every command like it's life or death, to going out and fighting naked while his fortress is literally being raided. Honestly, with that look in his eyes, I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets aroused from the idea of being stabbed. Ramsay is a character I feel like the series desperately needed. Yes, we had crazy people before, like Joffrey, but here's the difference. When Joffrey was at his peak insanity, he had the absolute power to back it up, because he was king. He could do anything he wanted simply because of his status. Ramsay, on the other hand, he started off as a bastard. He was a nobody. And while Joffrey's cruelty came from abusing power and enjoying the suffering that came with it, I genuinely don't think he would have done half of the things he did if he didn't have that power. Ramsay, on the other hand, does it purely because of his love for the game, hunting girls in the forest with his dogs, mentally shredding Tion's identity into pieces, etc. To him, this isn't a privilege, it's a hobby. And Reek, his masterpiece, is the most loyal servant he could have ever created. He's trained like a dog, he does everything Ramsay commands without hesitation, he straight up refuses to be rescued by his own sister, who risked a lot to save him, and he even misses the perfect chance to kind of avenge Robb. Not technically avenge him, but you get my point. But all this training pays off big time, because Ramsay's efforts lead to Tion infiltrating the Moat Callin, which results in Ramsay finally getting acknowledged by his father, officially changing his name from Snow to Bolton, ending his time as a bastard. The deserved downfall of the Lannisters. Joffrey's poisoning. Personally, I find Joffrey's poisoning bittersweet. On one hand, I'm happy the sadistic little cockroach finally got what he deserved. No more psychotic tantrums, no more torturing innocent people just because he's bored. But on the other hand, his death doesn't match the weight of everything he did. Yeah, it's tragic and disturbing to watch, but honestly, it was the easy way out. The fact that he got poisoned feels unjust both for us viewers and for the characters in the show. For us, the viewers, his death basically says the only way to deal with Joffrey was to stoop to his level and use some sneaky, disgusting method. He didn't lose in a duel, he wasn't overthrown, he didn't get humiliated or tortured the way he tortured others for years. No, he just choked and died, quick and done, no real payback. And for the characters it's even worse. Arya didn't go through hell just to have him conveniently die before she could do anything. She witnessed Eddard's execution because of him. She carried a trauma for seasons. Sansa suffered mentally and emotionally under him every single day. Robb saw his pregnant wife and unborn child murdered, a chain of events that started because of Joffrey. Catelyn lost her entire family, Bran and Rickon's lives were twisted beyond repair, and all that pain, destruction, trauma, mostly started with Joffrey. And for him to get away with a relatively quick death while others suffered endlessly is disappointing. It feels unfair and honestly, it's nowhere near enough. Cersei's reaction. We've reached the part of the show where Cersei becomes impossible to ignore. She's doing too much filthy, manipulative, slimy nonsense for us to just brush off anymore. After Joffrey takes his final breath, or doesn't, I guess, Cersei immediately screams that it was Tyrion. No thinking, no evidence, just instant blame out of pure spite. And as we later learn, she's wrong. But here's the thing, even if she knew who did it, she'd still blame Tyrion, because the situation was the perfect setup to destroy him. I'm not saying the real culprit wouldn't face consequences, but Cersei wanted Tyrion gone, and this was her dream opportunity served on a golden platter. Tyrion's trial. We all pretty much knew how Tyrion's trial was going to go. Everyone turns on him, witness after witness, lying straight to his face, acting like he personally poured poison down Joffrey's throat. They're basically building this fake narrative to drag him to his execution, and Tyrion just stands there, taking it all in, pretty much accepting his fate. But then Shae walks in, probably the only person whose words could actually hurt Tyrion. And she lies too, making the case against him even stronger. That's the moment he snaps. He finally breaks and unleashes everything he's been holding in, roasting the entire courtroom and the whole damn city for how they've been treating him his entire life. And then he demands the same thing that saved him in the Eyrie, a trial by combat. The room freezes, people are shocked, some are terrified. Tyrion just challenged the system again, but this time the stakes are even higher. Bronn saved him once, maybe he'll do it again, right? Yeah, no. Bronn refuses, because the opponent isn't some random knight. It's the Mountain. With Jaime out of the question because of his hand, and Bronn choosing survival over loyalty, Tyrion is left with nobody, until a miracle walks into his cell. Oberyn Martell. He tells Tyrion he'll be his champion and he'll fight the Mountain. And conveniently for Oberyn, this isn't just about helping Tyrion, this is his life-awaited chance to take revenge on the man who murdered his sister and her children. Oberyn versus the Mountain. Pride and revenge are both huge themes in Game of Thrones, but in this fight, for Oberyn, it wasn't a mix of both, it was pure pride. Some people might say Oberyn fought to avenge his sister. No, he didn't. If this was about true revenge, the kind that comes from pain, loss and justice, he would have fought differently. He would have been focused, precise and ruthless. Instead, Oberyn came into the arena like he was putting on a performance to prove a point. He didn't come to avenge his sister. He came to prove to himself and to everyone watching that if he had been there years ago, he would have stopped the mountain and his sister would still be alive. It wasn't about her, it was about his ego. Even during the fight, Oberyn wasn't serious. He was showboating, dancing around, taunting, dragging it out like he wanted applause. But the BM goes wrong. The mountain grabs him, flips the entire momentum and turns Oberyn's revenge into a brutal and horrifying defeat. His pride didn't just cost him the win, it erased the revenge completely. Oberyn didn't fight for his sister, he didn't fight for Tyrion, he didn't even fight to humiliate the Lannisters. He fought for himself, for his pride, using revenge as a pretty excuse to justify his ego. Tyrion's escape. After Oberyn's defeat, Tyrion's fate is basically sealed. He's waiting for his execution. But of course, his destiny isn't set in stone, as Jaime and Varys pull a quick 1-2 on the Lannisters, get him out of trouble and set him on his way to safety. But Tyrion isn't just running away from King's Landing. Nah, he's taking revenge on the two people who hurt him the most during this whole nightmare. First up Shae, he chokes her out cold. Then Tywin finds him on the Iron Throne, quickscopes him twice. Boom, justice served. After that, he's officially labeled as luggage and escapes with Varys. From here on out, it's the vast beautiful sea and whatever madness awaits for them beyond it. The only missing piece. So let's do a quick recap. Joffrey got poisoned, Tywin got killed, Jaime lost his fighting hand, Tyrion got exiled and was on his way to execution. But there's one piece missing. Cersei, the only one who didn't get punished directly. Yeah, she lost her son and had all that indirect stuff happen to her, but in case you have forgotten, Jaime lost his son as well, and he got punished directly by losing his hand. So I'm ending this segment of the Lannisters' downfall by saying this. I just know she's going to get what she deserves, and when that happens, it's going to be brutal. Sweet but brutal. Stark's remontada. Lannister stocks are down, Stark stocks are up. So let's start with the fact that, as far as we know, Rickon is safe. Let's continue with Arya. After Sandor's failed attempt to return Arya to her family for some gold, he decides maybe her aunt would want her, and off to the Eyrie they go. On the road, it feels like they're getting a little closer, but the truth is, Arya's opinion of Sandor doesn't really change. Even when he tries, if not to be good, then at least bearable, she sees right through him. He steals from people in need, even after they helped them and fed them. And let's be real, even if he wanted to act like a good person, he physically can't anymore, as he's done too much bad stuff in the past. Being bad towards people has basically become second nature to him. Anyways, they reach the Eyrie. But due to the circumstances there, Sandor is unable to give Arya to her aunt, and they stay on the road, eventually stumbling upon Brienne and Podrick. Of course, that leads to a brutal fight between Sandor and Brienne, and yeah, Brienne comes on top. But here's the moment I really liked. In the final scene, Arya gives him exactly what he's been giving people his whole life. She takes his silver and just leaves. No explanation, no words, nothing. Gone. Just like that. But then I started wondering, okay, where is Arya even going? She's tough, sure, but she's still a kid, with basically no family left. Turns out, luck is on her side, she finds someone she can give her a magical coin to, Valar Morghulis, and off to Bravos we go. Baelish investing in Bitcoin. This one is kinda tricky as Sansa is technically still under someone else's control, and I believe it's not someone who has her best interest in mind. But it's way better than being in King's Landing. Can you imagine what Cersei would have done if Sansa was still in reach? Baelish decides to take the risk. He brings her to the Eyrie, yeah, that Eyrie, with the people I hoped I'd never see again. Long story short, Baelish has an affair with Lysa and they even get married soon after. But Lysa isn't happy. She gets jealous of Sansa and pressures her to admit she's trying to seduce Baelish, which she isn't. She's just a child. The real problem? Baelish makes a move on Sansa. Lysa sees it and later she confronts Sansa, with the full intention of sending her on an awesome magical journey through the Moon Door. Fortunately, Baelish saves the day. He calms Lysa down and then pushes her right through the Moon Door, solidifying his choice. Of course, everyone notices Lysa's disappearance, and Baelish gets called to the Vales' council. Things go badly, the council suspect him, but then Sansa shows up and she lies for him, and gets him out of trouble. Yeah, do you know what? She deserves everything that's happened to her, and more. I simply cannot defend her anymore. Brance's party reached their goal. As expected, Brance's journey isn't exactly a vacation. After heading north of the wall to follow the three-eyed raven, they get captured at Craster's Keep by the same deranged members of the Night's Watch, who killed Mormont, and did that massacre we talked about before. Fortunately enough, Brance's capture lines up with Jon Snow's revenge mission, and with a few tricks and some close calls, the party escapes Craster's Keep. They keep going until they finally reach the special tree from Brance's dreams, the end of their journey. Of course, being tired, hungry and cold takes a toll. When they're attacked by living skeletons? Yeah, I don't really know. Well, Jojen unfortunately dies, but the rest of the party gets saved by this little witch girl. She leads them into a safe spot in the tree's roots. I'm not even sure if it's a hole, but let's roll with it. It's a hole. There they finally meet the entity responsible for everything, and what does he tell Bran? Evan, you will fly. So who's that Evan now? The Crow-Savage War. I want to talk about the conflict between the Crows and the Savages right after the Starks section because guess what? Jon Snow is kind of a Stark, but not fully. This is basically the only episode focusing on one side of the story, that being the Night's Watch, and honestly, you just gotta admire Game of Thrones. They made a single episode feel like a high budget movie. Absolute chef's kiss. Okay, but what is happening during the war? So basically Castle Black is getting attacked from both sides, and the challengers that are about to face our favorite spot are Savages, mainly, Cannibals, Giants and Mammoths. Yes, they even have Mammoths! But on the other side we have the indomitable human spirit. 100 Crows versus a 100,000 man army. But to be honest, the Crows really stand their ground, not willing to give up Castle Black at all. Okay, first let's talk Jon Snow, as he's basically the main character of this whole ordeal. Since recovering from Ygritte's arrows, he's been tormented by Alistair Thorne, this guy, who you might remember from the previous seasons. Practically everything Jon suggests either get twisted or ignored. They even had a trial for him to see what was he up to, as if he would betray them. Now Thorne might be a complete idiot, but he's no coward. During the siege, he willingly goes to the front lines to defend the castle. We also get some standout moments from these other characters. Gren and a few brothers hold the gate against the literal giant. Edison Tollett takes control of the forces on the wall and protects it from climbing savages. And as we mentioned, Alistair Thorne rallies the troops and leads the counterattack. Even with all that, manpower isn't enough, so the terrorists from the Night's Watch resort to full-on bombing the savages using explosive barrels. Okay, to be honest, the savages had it coming. The most important figure in the battle? Jon Snow, of course. He takes control of the troops on the wall, instructs Gren to defend the gate, a crucial move, and later joins the counterattack inside Castle Black to fight off infiltrators. But no win comes without sacrifice, some good men die and Ygritte dies too. This isn't just tragic for Jon, but for us viewers as well. Yeah, you could argue it's poetic, considering she gets killed by the kid whose family and village got destroyed by her side, but still it's a gut punch. Jon loses his first love, possibly his last, and I have no idea if he's ever going to recover from it. Now, with nothing left to lose, Jon decides to take a gamble. He goes to talk to Mance Rayder to try to negotiate a deal to spare the remaining crows. Reasonable, right? Surprisingly, the meeting goes smoothly. I was tense watching it, but Mance is honestly just a pretty chill dude. They have a drink, mourn the dead, and have a real conversation. But of course, as we know Game of Thrones, it doesn't end clean. No decision, no deal, because the crazy heretic Baratheon makes his return. Stannis sets his eyes on the throne. So after getting crushed in his attempt to take King's Landing, Stannis knows that a person is only truly defeated when they give up. Well, he kinda gave up, but somehow he managed to pick himself back up, and after his and Davos' visit to the Iron Bank, he's managed to gather quite the army. And from the looks of it, he's got Mance Rayder on the ropes right now, all that while making the acquaintance of Jon Snow. Okay, I personally love scenes like this, when some of the most important characters or army leaders get into dramatic talks or quashes, but I don't think Stannis would stay long at Castle Black. With the Lannisters weekend, there's no better moment than now to make a move for the throne. Daenerys chillings. Okay, Daenerys does what Daenerys does. She frees some more slaves. Yoo-hoo! Never seen that one before, but things don't go exactly the way she wants. Her dragoons are in the team phase. They don't listen to their mama anymore and start doing bad stuff on their own, like going absolutely wild, burning things, people, chaos everywhere. Daenerys quickly finds out about their misbehavior and locks her spoiled children in a dungeon, leaving them in the dark. Oh, and she also learns about Jorah's deal to betray her to get back into King's Landing, so she kicks him out of the slave-freeing coup. The visual contrast of Season 1 and the rest of the seasons. In Season 1 of Game of Thrones, the colors are really bright, and I mean really bright. Sometimes I go back to grab a scene or a moment from Season 1, and it almost feels like my eyes are burning. Even in the darker scenes, everything is still clearly visible. Sometimes it feels almost too bright. Then in the following seasons, the contrast gets darker and darker. Now, the logical explanation is probably something like, Season 1 was a test for contrast, camera settings, lighting, etc. And later, they realized that when the theme is darker, the scenes feel more suspenseful and gripping. But you know we aren't going for the logical answer. The real reason might be the story itself. Season 1 is kind of calm, we meet the Starks, we meet other characters, we explore the world, some bad stuff happen, yeah, but overall it's pretty chill compared to what comes later. Then as the seasons go on, each one gets darker than the last, and that could be a direct reflection of the story. By Season 4, it's so dark at times that I can't even get a proper screenshot for the thumbnail. In the previous video, I mentioned that I was hoping this season would be better than the last, meaning I was hoping Season 4 would top Season 3, and honestly I think it does. For me Season 4 is a 10 out of 10. The best season so far. Almost every episode felt like a movie, and so much happens that it's even hard to cover it all. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my little chicken nuggets. It's time for Season 5 of Game of Thrones, and yeah, this one's kinda disappointing, so let's not waste any more time and jump straight into it. Lord Commander Jon Snow. So, long story short, Stannis wanted Mance's forces to help him fight for the Iron Throne, but Mance refuses. So Stannis basically tells Jon Snow, if he doesn't cooperate, he burns. Jon tries his best to convince Mance, but nothing works. Mance stands by his principles, so Stannis and Melisandre burn him alive. And Jon Snow, being Jon Snow, can't just watch someone suffer like that, even if it's the king beyond the wall. So he puts an arrow through Mance's heart too, and he's miserable. misery. But instead of punishing him, Stannis actually respects it. He sees Jon's potential and offers him something insane.
Kneel before me. Lay your sword at my feet. Pledge me your service and you'll rise again as Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell.
Jon genuinely considers it, but in the end he declines. As after the battle for Castle Black and the death of Jorah Mormont, the Night's Watch desperately needs a new world commander. And surprisingly enough, they choose the most diplomatic method possible. They vote. Even though most people want Alistair Thorne, some stands up and nominates Jon Snow. And the room actually reacts well. Well, not everyone. But Jon wins by one final vote. The Maester himself. So now as world commander, Jon starts focusing on how to actually improve the Night's Watch. And being the kind soul he is, he can't ignore all the people still stuck beyond the wall. He's tripped to save the wildlings. Jon is torn about whether he should go and save the wildlings, but after a talk with Maester Aemon, who basically tells him, people will hate you no matter what, so do what you think is right, Jon finally makes up his mind. He goes because he's simply a good person. Jon and Tormund travel together to the wildling camp, they meet the elders, negotiate, explain that Jon actually killed Mance out of mercy, and offer Dragonglass as a peace token. After some resistance, they manage to convince a good portion of the clans to come with them. Everything seems like it's going well. Yeah, about that. The dead fight back. As the wildlings start boarding the boats, the dead attack. Skeletons, White Walkers, everything that shouldn't be moving, starts moving. Jon, Tormund and the wildlings hold their ground for a while, but there's a huge problem. The Dragonglass, the only thing that kills the White Walkers, got left behind in the negotiating hut. So Jon and one of the leaders run back to get it, and they get completely overpowered. The wildling leader dies, Jon gets knocked around and it looks hopeless. Until Jon realizes something insane. Valyrian steel can shatter a White Walker. He kills one in a single blow, which is pretty convenient, but the fight is still lost. Jon, Tormund and Ned manage to escape on a boat, and then we get one of the most iconic scenes ever. The leader of the army of the dead walks to the shore, walks sides with Jon Snow and raises every single dead person from the battle. Jon is left speechless, and honestly rightfully so was I. This scene was tense as hell. Seeing how close Jon actually was, yeah. Zakhari Bakharov. I just have to mention my fellow countryman. Yes, we have internet in Bulgaria, kind of crazy I know. Although he only plays a small role, I'm still proud of seeing him there.
Носете си новите дрехи, момчета.
Season 5 Sam is still useless. I'm honestly getting tired of mentioning Sam in every single video, but whatever, let's do a quick recap. He gets introduced, he gets bullied, Jon saves him, then he goes on the expedition, he gets bullied, Jorah Mormont saves him, they return to Craster's Keep, the massacre happens, he runs off with the girl he likes, then they get attacked by a White Walker, which Sam kills by accident. And you think, okay, that's cool, maybe he'll finally level up? No! Instead of becoming more confident, he just gets mocked and called Sam the Slayer, and now in Season 5, two Night's Watch brothers attack Gilly, and Sam can't do a single thing. He just gets tossed around like a punching bag until Ghost shows up and saves them both. And look, all of this is tragic, but what actually makes me angry is the simple fact that his best friend is literally one of the best fighters in the entire show. If Sam wanted to learn how to fight, even the basics, he absolutely could've. But nah, I guess that's not important in a world where only the strong survive and do whatever they want. Now, before you kindly remind me that he wants to be a maester, he just likes reading, he's not built for fighting. Sure, fine, but taking a few self-defense lessons from Jon is basically the bare minimum. It would help him, it would help Gilly, and it would help him not die instantly every time something happens. Game of Thrones is literally built on two things, fighting and politics, and you can be really good at the politics part, but if you can't even defend yourself properly, you're not going to last long. And the craziest part, Stannis tells us that Sam's father was actually a monster in battle. He even gave Robert Baratheon his first loss, so Sam clearly has the genetics, he just refuses to use them. Anyways, Sam eventually leaves to study to become a Grand Maester, leaving Jon behind, completely alone in a place where half of the men already hate him, so yeah, the fighting part isn't happening anytime soon. Traitor. Jon returns with the wildlings, there's a tense standoff at the gate, but Alistair eventually lets them through. But Jon now has more enemies than ever. Being a good person sometimes just isn't enough. As Alistair Thorne himself says,
You have a good heart, Jon Snow. It'll get us all killed.
And eventually Jon is betrayed the exact same way Jorah Mormont was. His own brothers stab him, one by one, until he collapses in the snow. Blood doesn't mix with snow, it just sits on top of it. The end of Stannis. Okay, up until this point, my opinion of Stannis was that he was mainly just crazy and a full-on heretic, and this season he completely proved me right. He stayed at Castle Black. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, during his stay at Castle Black, he almost fooled me. His conversations with Jon Snow, the way he showed actual care for his daughter, how he acted like a calm, reasonable leader, he genuinely seemed like he was changing for the better. I really thought he was turning into a solid guy. Yeah, no, I was very wrong. On the way to Winterfell, Stannis eventually leaves Castle Black and marches towards Winterfell to take it from the Boltons. But of course, nothing goes right for him. A brutal storm hits, wrecks his supplies, freezes half his army, and a big chunk of his men just straight up deserts him. And Ramsay infiltrates his camp and burns some of his supplies as well. So Stannis sends Davos back to Castle Black to ask Jon Snow for help. More men, more food, basically anything. And with Davos gone, Melisandre gets the perfect idea. Stannis should sacrifice his own daughter to please the Lord of Light. And you think there's no way he's doing that. But he does. He actually does. After that horrific moment, the little bit of hope he had left disappears. Another huge part of his army abandons him, Melisandre leaves, and his wife ends up taking her own life. But Stannis still marches. He still goes to Winterfell, fully committed to a battle he can't possibly win. And as expected, with his numbers reduced, his soldiers starving, freezing and mentally done, he gets absolutely obliterated. Somehow he survives the chaos, but not for long. Brienne finds him and she finally avenges Renly, officially putting an end to the Stannis saga. Sansa Bolton. Who would have thought that Baelish isn't actually a good guy? Well, clearly not Sansa. So long story short, Sansa and Baelish travel from the Eyrie to Winterfell and she gets put into an arranged marriage with Ramsay. At first he's polite, respectful and even friendly. But we all know Ramsay. That's not who he is. Not even close. The North remembers. Thankfully, Sansa still has some people in the North who care about her. An old woman sneaks into her room and tells her that if she ever needs help, all she has to do is light a candle and place it in the window of the broken tower. A small bit of hope, but it's something. But then Ramses' girlfriend gets jealous and drags Sansa to see Rick, who basically has been avoiding her till this point. And the whole thing completely breaks her. She's shocked, sad, angry, all at once. And when Ramsay finds out about this little meeting, he's not happy. But now that Sansa knows about Rick, Ramsay doesn't have to hide him anymore, and of course he uses that to his full advantage. The wedding night. Eventually Sansa is forced into the marriage, she has no real say in it, and on their wedding night Ramsay sadly violates her, while making Rick watch. This is honestly one of the darkest scenes in the entire series. The failed signal. After days of Ramses' torture, Sansa finally gathers the courage to ask Rick to bring the candle to the broken tower. But Rick, still fully brainwashed, brings the information straight to Ramsay instead, and Ramsay responds by torturing the woman who tried to help Sansa. The escape. Even after that, Sansa doesn't give up. She tries to escape again, only to run straight into Ramses' girlfriend and Rick, with the girlfriend pointing an arrow at her, ready to kill her. But this time, Theon snaps. He's had enough. He pushes Ramses' girlfriend off the ledge to her death, and he and Sansa finally make a run for it, jumping off the walls of Winterfell together. Okay, I have mixed feelings about this one. On one hand, we could possibly see a Theon redemption arc, but on the other, all of this could have been avoided if Sansa just told the truth instead of lying in the more crucial moments of the show. Anyways, we'll see how this one turns out. Arya's training. Okay, Arya reaches Bravos, she finds Jaqen, who apparently isn't Jaqen because he's no one, but also somehow is still Jaqen. I don't know either, but he's still one of the most interesting people in the entire show, so we'll stick to that. Anyways, Arya basically becomes a maid for the House of Black and White. She cleans floors, washes corpses, basically the more common chores, and after a while, Jaqen finally begins her training, which she completely fails. Because instead of following orders and selling oysters like she's supposed to, Arya decides it's finally time to deal with Sir Meryn Trant. She acts on her own, breaks the rules, kills him in one of the coldest scenes she's had so far. And Jaqen, yeah, he's not too thrilled about that one, so he blinds her. Okay, that scene right there, no idea what's real, no idea what's fake, who's alive, who's dead. Anyways, the Daenerys situation. Tyrion plus Varys plus Jorah. So Tyrion's escape with Varys last season wasn't just a random getaway. Varys basically wanted to bring Tyrion to Daenerys, and I guess Tyrion is his best friend now? Tyrion's hesitant at first, obviously, but eventually he agrees. But on their way there, Jorah scoops Tyrion up and decides to deliver him to Daenerys as some kind of a gift? Friend? Prisoner? Bonus reward? Honestly, even he doesn't seem sure. And their journey is rough. They get attacked by grayscale fanatics, captured by pirates, sold as slaves, but eventually one way or another, they actually make it to Daenerys. Daenerys. After everything she did in Meereen in the previous seasons, Daenerys finds herself dealing with a whole list of problems, with the biggest one obviously being the Sons of the Harpy. And the Sons of the Harpy, yeah, they go absolutely wild. They kill civilians, attack unsullied patrols, and cause total chaos. And after she banishes Jorah, Daenerys finally realizes things are getting way out of control. The Sons of the Harpy are also annoyingly smart. They ambush Grey Worm and Sir Barristan in a completely unfair fight. A fight that ends with Sir Barristan dying tragically and Grey Worm getting stabbed. And when Daenerys hears about all of this, she does what she always does whenever she runs out of options. She tries her luck with the Dragoons, but they're still mad at her for locking them in the basement like misbehaving teenagers, so they're not exactly in the helping mood. So she does the only logical thing left. She reopens the fighting pits. It actually turns out pretty good, because she reunites with Jorah for the third time, and he ends up saving her from a Sons of the Harpy assassin. But of course, it isn't just one assassin, the entire fighting pit turns into a massacre. Daenerys' crew forming a circle around her. The numbers are still against them, until Drogon returns. He flies in like he owns the place, burns out the arena, and then flies away with Daenerys. Her crew manages to regroup in Meereen and make a plan to go look for her. Tyrion gets left behind to rule the city, and thankfully, Varys finally shows up again to help him out. Unfortunately, Daenerys doesn't get found by her actual rescue party, she gets found by a group of Dothraki riders, and they capture her. The story is starting to shift heavily towards Daenerys now, with Tyrion and Varys on her side, an army at her back, a few dragoons, okay, one of which actually listens, and so much momentum building up around her, it really feels like everything is pushing her towards one thing, making her move for the throne. But as we are talking about thrones now, King's Landing, missing plot because everyone there is basically gone. The Sparrows. I honestly don't remember them being mentioned even once before this season, and if I don't remember and I've made a full video for every single season so far, that means they probably weren't. So the Sparrows were basically a distraction introduced to us in season 5, because with Joffrey dead, Tywin dead, Jaime gone and Tyrion gone, King's Landing had literally no one left to carry the story. Tommen isn't interesting, Marjorie is pretty much the same, and Cersei, yeah, she's extremely unlikable at this point. So I get why they introduced the Sparrows. King's Landing needed something to keep the plot moving, but the problem is simple. They weren't interesting, they were forced, they had no depth, they showed up out of nowhere and expected us to care. And this brings me to the main question. Why is the story still focusing on King's Landing when there are no interesting characters left there? They could have focused more on the Night's Watch or Winterfell, maybe a POV of the Savages before Jon came to rescue them, or literally anything else. But no, they stuck with King's Landing even though the place was basically a narrative wasteland. Varys Tyrell. Oh, and I almost forgot. Varys. He is just there for the sex scenes at this point. I mean, I probably should have seen it coming from the moment he was introduced as Renly's lover, but still, outside of the romantic aspect, he's supposed to be a really respectable fighter. So naturally I expected him to grow as a character, show more of his skill and get more involved in the actual plot. But no, he's basically the exact same character he was back in season 1, and it's getting kinda annoying. No development, no depth, just sex scenes and vibes. Cersei says punishment. Last season I said Cersei was going to get what she deserved, and yeah, she does. But just like Joffrey's storyline, it wasn't delivered by any of the characters she wronged. It comes from an entirely new group of people who appear out of nowhere. Yeah, the punishment was brutal and hard to watch, but it still somehow flew under the radar. It never felt like the true payback that should have come from the actual storyline we've been following for 4 seasons. The Lannisters really get a special kind of treatment when it comes to consequences. Conclusion. Okay, I would be understating it if I said I didn't enjoy King's Landing this season. It just didn't work. Empty, forced, repetitive, like the show was trying to fill space until something better happened. Jaime and Bronn in Dorne. The duo we didn't know we needed heads to Dorne to pick up Myrcella. Jaime does all of this because of Cersei, as always, so he grabs Bronn and off they go. They sneak in, fight a bit, blend into whatever's going on. Then they run into the Sand Snakes, who are basically on a mission to kill Myrcella to avenge Oberyn or something like that. And at one point, Bronn even punches the future king of Dorne. Bronn gets thrown into a cell, Jaime gets caught, but surprisingly the Dornish are pretty chill about the whole thing. They basically just let Jaime and Bronn go and even arrange their trip back home. On their way back, Myrcella finally tells Jaime that she always knew he was her father, and that she's proud of it. It's a really sweet moment, which was about 10 seconds. Because Oberyn's wife, the same one who ordered the Sand Snakes to kill Myrcella, absolutely despises the Lannisters. She hates everything connected to them, including Myrcella, and she poisons her. Myrcella dies in Jaime's arms, completely shocking him, and honestly, this whole thing is just insane. The Prince of Dorne literally knew what she was planning, he knew her intentions, and he still let her walk around free like nothing happened. Overall, a pretty disappointing season, easily the weakest one so far. The first 7 episodes are practically non-existent, and honestly, if those last 3 didn't carry the entire thing on their backs, I would have given season 5 a straight 6, maybe a 7. And no, I'm not going to say 7 right after the 6, I know you guys are fried. But being fair, even though it's disappointing compared to what I expect from Game of Thrones, the season is still a solid 8 out of 10. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my glorious X-Wings, it's time for season 6 and I genuinely can't wait to talk about this one, so let's not waste any more time and jump straight into it. Sansa reunites with Jon. Jon gets revived, so Davos discovers the body of Jon Snow and brings him to a room, while informing Cat Toilet. They quickly realize that if Alistair Thorne finds out about what they're planning, things are going to get really bad. So Ed runs off to get the Wildlings for help, while Davos and the others hold the room. Eventually Alistair Thorne gathers his squad like it's the Power Rangers and prepares to break into the room and kill them, but with perfect timing the Wildlings arrive with it. And I just have to say Tormund just might be the GOAT at this point. The Wildlings take Alistair Thorne and Tolly, this little shit, to their cells, and with the danger gone, Davos goes to ask Melisandre to revive Jon. She tries, but it doesn't work, until Jon wakes up. Everyone in the room is completely shocked that it actually worked, but the job's not finished. Some people still need to pay for their sins.
Kill that boy! Kill that boy!
But after justice gets served, John gives his World Commander Poke to a toilet and proclaims him the new World Commander before leaving the Night's Watch and stating that his watch has ended. Sansa escapes Ramsay. Apparently the drop from the walls is just light work for Sansa and Tion, as they continue escaping Ramsay's dogs and pursuers with seemingly healthy legs. But that doesn't really matter. Not long after they cross a river, they get caught. But just when it looks like it's over for them, Brienne and Podrick arrive to save the day. A battle begins in which Sansa's squad manages to defeat Ramsay's men, and later Brienne pledges loyalty to Sansa, keeping her oath to Catelyn. Now realizing Sansa no longer needs him, Tion tells her he's going back home. They hug it out, say their goodbyes, and Sansa continues with her new friends towards Castle Black. They're meeting at Castle Black. Sansa and her new crew eventually reach Castle Black. She reunites with Jon and they have some touching talks, but the safety doesn't last long, because Ramsay isn't just going to defeat himself. Oh, and he feels a little spicy, so he sends them a message. Ramsay's message and their decision to take Winterfell. Jon starts reading Ramsay's message during family dinner, and unfortunately I cannot read his kind words to the Starks because of YouTube guidelines, so let's just say he had fun writing the message. And this message is really important, because up to this point Jon was pretty much tired of fighting and against the idea of taking Winterfell. He was just basically done with everything. But this letter, yeah, Ramsay basically sealed his fate with it. Gathering forces. As Jon and Sansa gather forces for the siege on Winterfell, they manage to convince the wildlings, who are extremely loyal to Jon at this point, because Tormund is Loki the Goat, and even get a whopping 62 men from House Mormont after some tough negotiations. But not everything goes smoothly, as some houses turn them down. With winter coming and Rickon being captured, time is ticking, so Jon decides to just go for it. But since Sansa doesn't really agree, she secretly writes a message to Baelish, hoping for Knights of the Vale reinforcements. Ramsay losing his last bit of sanity. Okay, I'm just going to say it. Ramsay is the character Joffrey was supposed to be. He's cocky, ultra deranged, a full-on sociopath, and somehow, even with all these traits, he still manages to be interesting, funny at times, and straight up unpredictable. Which is why I like him so much. Honestly, I might just make a separate video about Ramsay when I'm done with the regular seasons. Anyways, this season Ramsay completely lost his marbles. Maybe let's start with the fact that he killed his own father, or wait, that might be too obvious for a start. Maybe that he brought his stepmother and newborn brother to be devoured by his trained dogs? Or simply how he then played a game of Chase the Kid with Rickon, right before the most important battle of his life. Just imagine if that final arrow somehow missed, he'd be at a huge disadvantage. But he just went for it. At this point it's not confidence, it's full-on mental illness, and I'm all here for it. The battle. After witnessing the Rickon situation, Jon completely loses control of his emotions and charges Ramsay, which almost gets him crushed to death. But then the real battle begins. People are dropping left and right, corpses pile up, chaos everywhere, and Ramsay pulls some crazy war tactic like he studied Prime Napoleon or something. He surrounds Jon's forces and pushes them towards a corpse pile, blocking their escape, and his soldiers use a full-on Spartan phalanx. This completely turns the battle around and all seems lost until the Knights of the Vale enter the battlefield, with Baelish and Sansa leading them. They absolutely annihilate Ramsay's forces and save Jon and company. Seeing all of this, Ramsay runs to hide behind Winterfell's doors. But Jon, Tormund and Woon sprint towards the castle, and right when Ramsay thinks he's safe, Woon breaks the door down. But no victory comes without sacrifices. Woon dies after Ramsay shoots him with an arrow, and Jon, completely enraged, grabs a shield, blocks Ramsay's shots, and beats him into a woody pulp with his bare fists. And honestly, this is how a villain should get punished. Jon's beating is satisfying enough, but then Sansa lets Ramsay's own dogs devour him, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Perfect way to end things. It's not that Joffrey wasn't a good character, it's the fact that Ramsay just has the full package. The result. With some casualties, some close calls, and a successful revenge, Jon and Sansa finally take their home back. But that's not all. As the gathered houses celebrate the victory, they proclaim Jon Snow as the new king of the north. Bran returns after missing season 5. So after disappearing from the story to have his own kind of training arc, Bran returns with his visions, which are basically a full-on DLC for the story. We learn that Hodor's real name is actually Willis, that the nymphs or fairies or whatever they are were actually the ones who created the White Walkers, and a few other important flashbacks, like the one where Howland, Mira and George's father, and Tedder rescue Lyanna from a tower. They fight a couple of insanely skilled Targaryen knights who almost defeat them, but in the end Howland saves Eddard, and Eddard heads up the tower to save Lyanna. But as Ned begins walking up the steps, the three-eyed raven snaps Bran out of the vision, telling him the classic, "If you stay too long, you might never return." Anyways, Bran is one curious lad, and later he tries to continue the earlier vision without his mystical friend, who is one sleepy boy. And the vision ends horribly. Instead of a sunny Winterfell memory, Bran sees the army of the dead, and they see him. The Night King touches Bran's arm inside the vision, which wakes him up instantly. And when the three-eyed raven wakes up and finds out the Night King touched him, he tells them they need to leave immediately, because the mark breaks the protection spell around the cave. But it's already too late. The army of the dead has arrived. His escape. As they begin evacuating from the cave, Summer gets completely jumped. It was painful to watch, and the sounds made it even worse. The party runs through an escape tunnel with one of the fairies or nymphs or whatever they are, but as the undead get closer, she sacrifices herself to buy Bran's group some more time. Unfortunately, it still isn't enough though. They make a narrow escape and Mira orders Hodor to hold the door, which he does really well actually. He buys them like 20 seconds. Whoa! Which is quite a lot of time for a girl dragging a cripple through the snow. And during his hold, we get the vision that explains how Hodor really became Hodor. Kind of nice, and I guess it makes sense. Okay, but is it only me, or the army of the dead doesn't seem that scary? Yes, they run that and all that, but they couldn't even catch a girl dragging a cripple. That's just full-on embarrassing. Anyways, during their escape, a strange figure saves them from the undead. It's Benjen who finally returns to the story. He explains that the fairies or nymphs or whatever actually saved him after his group was attacked by White Walkers. Sadly, Benjen is pretty cursed and can't fully accompany Bran and Mira back home, but he at least takes them to the Weirwood tree beyond the wall. I believe the same one where the Night's Watch brothers take their vows, so it should be pretty close to Castle Black. And they say their goodbyes before Bran touches the tree. His last vision of the season. Bran's final vision is basically a continuation of the earlier one with Ned and Lyanna. This time we see what really happened inside the tower. Ned enters the room, but instead of being tortured, Lyanna is actually giving birth. She tells Ned to protect the child and not to tell Robert about him, and as we get a glimpse of the baby, the scene cuts directly to Jon Snow, meaning yeah, he was the baby. And if the knights protecting Lyanna were Targaryen knights and Lyanna begged Ned to not tell Robert because he would have killed the child, then it's pretty much confirmed Jon Snow isn't actually a Stark, because he's a Stark and a Targaryen. Daenerys decides it's time. Captured by the Dothraki. Last season she got captured by the Dothraki and fortunately they don't kill her, but they take her to their cow, who obviously tells her they are going to do some bad stuff to her, really bad stuff, but she reveals that she is the wife of Khal Drogo, which changes things, because now they are obligated to take her to the Dosh Khalin. I don't know, is the Dothraki culture or something that all cow widows must go there, and that's exactly what they do. But during this whole time Jorah and Naryon and Naharis are catching up and they think of a plan to get Daenerys out of this mess. They meet her during the night and she basically tells them she has a better idea than just running away. She goes out of her way to enter the room with the cows and burns the whole place down, recreating the exact same scene from season 1 and making all the Dothraki new like they just saw a goat. It's good to know that every time Daenerys needs an army increase, she can always rely on her plot armor. And on their way back home, Jorah tells Daenerys about his grayscale disease and she tells him that she's ordering him to go and find a cure. Really heartwarming, considering she exiled him twice and neglected him the entire show. The defense of Meereen. If you ever feel dumb in life, remember these three morons decided to declare a war on 3 dragons, Tyrion and plot armor. Anyways, Daenerys' forces completely obliterate the attackers, with the Dothraki attacking the Sons of the Harpy on site, while Daenerys and her big dragoon burn the ships. And Tyrion and Grey Worm handle the political negotiation part. Theon and Yara's visit. So after Theon and Yara go through a huge journey trying to make Yara the queen of the Ironlands, long story short, their uncle killed their father so he can take the throne, and he does, and since Theon and Yara are the only true heirs, yeah, he basically wants them dead immediately. So Yara and Theon meet with Daenerys and Tyrion. Yara basically flirts with Daenerys throughout the whole negotiation, but at the end they strike a deal. Daenerys helps them and she gets their Iron Fleet in exchange, at least for some time. I guess it's finally time to assemble the Powerpuff Girls. Yara, Daenerys, and we are only missing Sansa, for the whole thing to be complete. Hand of the Queen. Later Daenerys is faced with the difficult decision to leave Daario Naharis behind, because someone has to take care of Meereen and the rest of the stuff there. They have the talk and he takes it somewhat well. Later it's revealed that it was basically Tyrion's idea and he has a conversation with Daenerys, with the two bonding and her having a really high opinion of him. So she makes him the Hand of the Queen, making him the first person in the show to be both Hand of the King and Hand of the Queen. Jaime. This season Jaime is mainly used to deal with Blackfish and to bring Walder Frey back into the story, because let's be real, Walder Frey isn't exactly that big or interesting of a character for him to just pop up like Bran did and for us to care. So using Jaime was actually a pretty smart move. Arya gets a second chance. So after Jaqen makes her blind, we find Arya in the streets of Braavos begging people for money, before the Bond girl from the House of Black and White shows up and throws a stick at her. They start fighting with sticks of the same caliber, but Arya is basically defenseless, because guess what? She is still blind. So the Bond girl beats her up, tells her that she's coming back tomorrow and leaves, clearly showing that Arya's training isn't fully over. On the very next day the Bond girl returns and Arya fails again, literally swinging at the air at one point, but then someone grabs her stick. It's Jaqen, who tests her again with the Agaro has no name stuff, but this time Arya passes the test, and he takes her to the House of Black and White to continue her training. She basically gets bullied by the Bond girl for a while, but Arya gets better at fighting without using her eyesight, which is actually pretty useful. Eventually she manages to defend herself against the Bond girl, all while Jaqen is watching. He later tests her again, and after seemingly passing he returns her vision, but unfortunately, even with her eyesight back, she still fails to defeat the Bond girl. But it doesn't really matter now, because Jaqen has a task for her. She has to get rid of a female actress. So Arya finds the actress, watches the play, and manages to get backstage to investigate and find a way to take her out. She decides to poison her drink, and on the actress's next play, Arya follows her plan perfectly. But on her way out, the actress starts talking to her, and after their small conversation, Arya changes her mind. She smashes the cup with the poison and warns the actress that another actress wants her dead. After that, Arya starts prepping to leave Braavos. She grabs Needle, finds a shelter, and talks to a sailor to take her back to Westeros. But as we know, Jaqen isn't the type to let a girl disobey orders, so the Bond girl surprise attacks Arya. Arya barely escapes and goes back to the same actress she refused to kill for help. The actress takes her in, bandages her, feeds her, and lets her stay until she recovers. But she isn't safe for long. The Bond girl finds her, kills the actress, and when Arya sees all that, she immediately jumps out the window, and their chase through Braavos begins. Arya eventually outsmarts her and leads her into the place where she hid Needle. She slices the candle and kills the Bond girl in the dark. And we learn all of this because later Arya confronts Jaqen, who finds the Bond girl's face hanging on the wall of faces. Arya points Needle at him and tells him she's leaving and going home, and Jaqen lets her go. And honestly, it feels like he was proud of her for surviving. But this isn't the last time we see Arya this season, because she ends with a banger. She takes revenge for her entire family by assassinating Walder Frey, using the power she learned from the many-faced god. Sansa's journey. Somehow Bran missed the whole of season 5, but we follow Sansa's entire journey to get to Old Town to become a Grand Maester, so I'm supposed to believe Sansa's travel was more interesting or important than Bran's whole ordeal? Yeah, I'm not sure. sure about that one. Anyways, unfortunately, I have to cover it because it might be important later on. So long story short, last season, Sam left Castle Black with a letter of recommendation from Jon Snow to go to Old Town and become a Grand Maester. So he and Gilly quickly leave and begin their travel. On their way, they take a ship, Sam gets seasick, and later they travel to Sam's family so Sam can leave Gilly there. Because Old Town doesn't allow girls, or the Citadel doesn't allow girls, something like that. And Sam's family surprisingly accepts Gilly. Well, not everyone. During family dinner, his father realizes that Gilly is actually a wildling, and he has a special kind of hate when it comes to wildlings. Anyways, dinner doesn't go the best way possible, as Sam's father gets a hold of him and just doesn't let go, bullying him and mocking him throughout the whole thing. But Sam's had enough, and he decides that he's leaving and taking Gilly with him. Oh, and he takes his family's Valyrian steel sword, the sword his family protected and treasured for 500 years, but it doesn't matter now, because Sam yoinks it and off they go. Anyways, they reach Old Town and Sam enlists to become a Grand Maester in the Citadel, checking out the library and all the books, the many books. Wait, where's the sword? Where's the sword? King's Landing, the Sparrows. I hate them so much, I can't even put into words how much I despise this group of individuals. This is why things aren't supposed to be radical. Even fate, when pushed to an extreme where people fall with blindly without any reasonable thinking or decision making, can lead to disaster, as we saw with the Sparrows. They were devoted to God, but they were radically devoted. And everything they did wasn't to purge once a sin, it was just to give meaning to their own twisted sense of faith and righteousness. Imagine thinking that making Cersei walk through the entire city naked would make your God happy or satisfied with her atonement. That is just pure delusion and ignorance. And normally this wouldn't have gotten to me this much, but the whole time all of this was happening, the High Sparrow was basically grinning, acting like he was some divine messenger who was absolutely right about everything. That grin was basically a huge, you don't know how wrong you are, but I know, because I represent God. Varys' trial. The renowned and respected knight Varys Tyrell fights for the pride of his house and is tragically overpowered him, but wait, wrong script. What I meant to say is, Varys loses his sanity in prison, admits to sleeping with men during his trial, gets a tattoo carved into his forehead, and gets stripped of his titles and family name. Not gonna lie, even after the season 5 disaster, I still had hope for him. But yeah, it is what it is. Cersei's a strap card. But Varys' trial doesn't go as intended, because Cersei decides it's finally time to use that cute shiny wildfire under the Sept of Baelor, and the explosion completely destroys the Sept and half the city. But honestly I'd say it's worth it, because we won't have to look at this deranged lunatic ever again. And most importantly, it sets another example of faith and religion throughout the Seven Kingdoms. The Sept, where the fate of the Seven is worshipped, gets destroyed by fire, which is basically another way of saying the word of the Seven got destroyed by the word of light. And do you remember how the High Sparrow told Jaime that the Sparrows' lives are just God's tools, and that none of them actually fear dying because it's God's will? Well, the moment he realizes the explosion is coming, he looks terrified, like he suddenly understood that everything he believed in was just a performance and none of it actually mattered. Tommen's jump. And Tommen doesn't take Marjorie's death very well. He's mentally destroyed, walks quietly to the window and jumps, fulfilling Cersei's prophecy completely. Tommen being as unlikable as Joffrey. Now that Tommen is gone, I want to talk about him for a second. I personally think Tommen is as unlikable as Joffrey, if not more. While Joffrey was a deranged monster, he still contributed to the story in a big way. He was interesting, he was impactful, he moved the plot. Tommen, on the other hand, does nothing. He gets manipulated like it's nothing, he can't stand up for himself, and the moment things get tough, he just jumps out the window. He's basically spineless. Now you might say he's just a kid. Yes, but he's no ordinary kid. He's the king of Westeros. And if I remember correctly, Arya is still technically a kid too, and she went through darker and harder things without taking the easy way out. Why am I even covering him? The fact that he listened to Pycel's advice says it all. Who looks at this dirt-smelling bag of bones and things? Yeah, he has all the answers. At least we won't have to worry about Pycelle anymore either. The queen of Westeros. But now with Tommen gone and no more children left to sit on the Iron Throne, Cersei decides enough is enough and straight up sits on the throne herself. The return of the dog. We have to address the elephant in the room, or I guess the hound in the room. After missing season 5 and fooling me into thinking he was dead, apparently Sandor Clegane is one of a bastard, but instead of killing people, he has now resorted to a far more peaceful way of living, being a builder and helping this guy on his little quest to do good deeds. And it seems like he really starts to enjoy the simple life, but unfortunately, not for long. A few representatives from the Brotherhood without banners discover Sandor's new friends, and after Sandor's people refuse to give them food and ale, they kill every single one of them, hanging their leader, the same man who saved Sandor. So Sandor grabs his trusty hatchet and turns into a full-on serial killer. He hunts the culprits down like Ramsay hunts girls, killing one of them and stumbling onto the others, who are already in the process of being hanged by the actual Brotherhood without banners. Long story short, Sandor strikes a deal with Dondarrion, he gets to kill 2 of them, and everything remains peaceful. Something cooking in Dorne. So we witness a full-on revolution in Dorne. Basically the Sun Snakes kill the king of Dorne, and later, after the whole King's Landing accident, Olenna Tyrell visits House Martell to seek companions for her revenge mission on the Lannisters. And they have a special guest, Varys. You just know that when Varys is somewhere, there is always something important plotting. Well, after a quite disappointing season 5, season 6 is definitely a more Game of Thrones kinda season. So I'll be giving it a strong 9.5 out of 10, because there were still some moments I didn't like as much. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my little sushi pieces. So we need to approach the season a little bit differently, because basically in season 7, the Avengers assemble. So without any further introductions, let's jump straight into it. The Three-Eyed Brandon. So the Three-Eyed Brandon reaches the Night's Watch gate with Mira, where they meet at toilet. After a quick talk with the Three-Eyed Brandon himself, Ed pretty much sends them home. And Bran reaches Winterfell safely, but we'll get to that later. For now, just remember this. He might not have 2 working legs, but he has 3 working eyes. The Dog, Dondarrion and Taurus. So after the Dog reunites with his old heretic friends, they decide to continue their journey together. As they head north, the weather isn't exactly ideal, so they take a shelter in an abandoned house, which turns out to be abandoned because it once belonged to the father and daughter Sandor robbed when he was still traveling with Arya. And this part is really interesting to me, because it feels like Sandor actually does feel remorse for all the bad things he's done, but even though he knows they're wrong, he still keeps on doing them. It's like he realizes this isn't who he wants to be, yet he keeps falling back to the same patterns regardless. At the very least, Sandor does one good thing. He buries the father and daughter later that night, with Taurus' help, before they continue their journey north. Arya, aura farming. Arya begins this season by finishing the job with the Freys, making sure she roots the stem of their house, and after wrapping that up, she decides it's Cersei time, and heads towards King's Landing. But after a quick stop at Hot Pies' tavern, she learns that the Boltons aren't really in charge anymore, and that her home is actually safe again. So naturally she changes routes, and from the moment Arya steps foot in Winterfell, she instantly becomes all nonchalant and mysterious, almost like Bran in a way. Are the Winterfell gates some kind of main character portal or what? She starts acting like everyone around her is a lower life form than her, which is honestly hilarious considering she spent most of last season getting beaten up with a stick. Anyways, she reunites with Sansa and Bran, spars on equal footing with Brienne, and goes toe-to-toe with Baelish's schemes. I mean, did I miss something? I guess Jaqen's training is just completely unmatched in Westeros? Arya's visit eventually leads to Baelish finally getting what he deserves after a pretty interesting trial, but we'll get more into that in Sansa's part later. Dr. Sam and Jorah the Experiment. So Sam's whole time in the Citadel in Old Town is nothing but disastrous. He basically cleans the patient's shit and piss. It's like he decided to go to the chum bucket instead of the Krusty Krab, and overall doesn't really learn anything important, because the most important information is locked behind a special gate, which you guessed it, he isn't supposed to enter. So Sam, now filled with confidence after doing a quick 1-2 on his father and stealing the family sword like a little rat, manages to snatch some books from the secret library to read. And later we learn that the Citadel has a special guest resting there, Jorah the Andal. We get a full glimpse of his condition when the Archmaester examines him, and by now Jorah is completely engulfed by grayscale. The Archmaester refuses to treat him, basically sealing his fate, but Sam doesn't agree one bit, because returning the favor to Jorah Mormont for saving him all those times is only right. So during the night, Sam takes all the required tools and books, kidnaps Jorah, and turns him into his guinea pig. He performs an operation that's basically impossible to complete, but Sam somehow quenches it and actually saves Jorah. His reward though? Absolutely nothing. In fact, the Archmaester thinks Sam's biggest reward should be not getting expelled. So everything goes back to normal. Sam keeps doing chores, cleaning shit, living the Citadel life. But one day during a gathering of the Maesters, Sam overhears a message sent by Bran about the Army of the Dead and the fact that it's coming. So Sam basically says,
Man, the first time was so nice, I had to do it twice.
Steals some books, just like he stole the family sword, and leaves Old Town with Gilly, heading to Winterfell. Eventually he reaches Winterfell and goes to inform Bran, but nothing really surprises Bran at this point. Still, he does tell Sam something important, Jon's true heritage, but this time he reveals his father, and Jon's real name, leaving the chubby thief completely speechless. And during this whole thing, Jon isn't actually in Winterfell, but we get to that later, don't worry. The 4 great powers. Now in season 7 we basically enter the endgame of Game of Thrones, and we have 4 main powers fighting it out. Jon and the North, Daenerys and her squad with the Dragoons, Cersei and whoever still doesn't hate her, and the Army of the Dead. We'll start with Jon and the North. So after being proclaimed king in the North, Jon basically has to do the same things he did back in Castle Black, but now on a much bigger scale. He handles political stuff, deals with alliances, and after a while he receives messages from both Cersei and Daenerys, telling him to come south and bend the knee. But as we know, Jon and company aren't exactly the biggest fans of Cersei. On top of that, Dr. Sam sends him a message revealing that Dragonstone is basically full of dragon glass, so eventually against pretty much every reasonable piece of advice, Jon decides to go and meet Daenerys instead. But you can't talk about the North without mentioning the Lady of Winterfell herself. After Jon leaves and puts Winterfell in her hands, Sansa, who has been incredibly annoying up until this point, takes full command. She's not alone though, because as we covered earlier, she now has the Three-Eyed Brandon and Arya on her side. The Knights of the Vale are still in Winterfell, since winter is already here and they can't really go back home, and of course, Baelish is still there, so you already know what that means. He starts doing his usual Baelish stuff, trying to manipulate Sansa, playing everyone against each other for his own gain, but this time he finally finds his match. Arya, Sansa and the Three-Eyed Brandon put an end to his schemes, because you really can't play from the shadows against the Three-Eyed Brandon. So long story short, Sansa calls for a trial that Baelish thinks is meant for Arya. He believes he's won again, but the trial isn't for Arya, it's for him, and with Bran's information, Baelish's fate is basically sealed. He's sentenced to death. His final moments are spent begging for his life before Arya kills him with the same dagger that started everything. Not gonna lie, I thought the house was gonna fall apart without Jon Snow, but somehow the remaining Starks kept it together, and even managed to catch the snake. Props to them for that one. Daenerys, Squad and Dragoons. So after Stannis' failed attempt at the throne, Dragonstone was basically left abandoned, so Daenerys takes it as her temporary base, and soon gathers her allies to plan a strike on the Lannisters. It's the endgame now, so no time to waste. The meeting includes Daenerys and her crew, the Greyjoys, the Mummy of the Sun Snakes, and Lyanna Tyrell. The plan? The Greyjoys take the Mummy of the Sun Snakes home with their fleet and return with some Dornish forces. Does it go perfectly though? Of course not, but we'll get to that later. The season's structure is a bit all over the place, so bear with me. And remember our favorite not-so-snowboy, Jon, who left Winterfell with Sir Davos to meet Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, first of her name, the Unburnt, Queen of the Andals and the First Man, Khaleesi of the Great Garasi, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, Protector of the Realm, Queen of Meereen, and Princess of Dragonstone. And considering we know both Jon and Daenerys, you think their meeting would go smoothly, they are both reasonable and good-hearted, but for some reason it doesn't. Jon is stubborn about bending the knee or even listening, because the Army of the Dead is coming and there's no time to waste. I kinda get it, it's his first meeting with her, he doesn't know her like we do, but still Jon being Jon, I half expected him to be a little more ready to help. Anyways, both of them stick to their opinions and nothing gets decided. Jon and Davos basically end up held hostage at Dragonstone, which shouldn't be too bad for Davos, since he's been there before. Meanwhile, Tyrion is doing his best to calm things down and find a reasonable solution for the fighting Targaryen children. He even gets a private moment with Jon to ask what he actually wants. And yes, it's that juicy dragonglass. Eventually Tyrion convinces Daenerys to let Jon and his mining operation proceed, which Jon really appreciates, and things run smoothly, at least for now. During their remaining stay at Dragonstone, Jon and Davos continue to talk and bond with Daenerys, and Jon and Daenerys get pretty close. Then Jorah the Andal returns, forming yet another love triangle. But Jon and Jorah's stay doesn't last long, because they're sent on a legendary quest to bring evidence of the Army of the Dead to Cersei, so she finally believes it exists, and that's when they leave Dragonstone. Cersei and King's Rest. So for most of season 7, Cersei is mainly chilling in King's Landing and doesn't really do that much disgusting stuff, at least not as much as in previous seasons. But that's all going to change later. So the reign of Her Majesty begins with the visit of this gentleman, who she basically kicks out after a short talk. But does this look like the face of someone who just give up when told to? Yeah, I didn't think so either. So Euron Greyjoy, being the kind-hearted soul that he is, tells Cersei that the next time he visits, he'll bring her a gift, and that he won't visit again without it. Okay, Euron Greyjoy is a strange character. It feels like he's supposed to fit the Joffrey Ramsay role, but he's just trying way too hard. Like every gesture, every tease, everything he says feels forced. I honestly can't take him seriously most of the time because of it. Anyways, to close off King's Arrest for now, we have to mention Cersei's hidden weapon, the Scorpion, made especially for Daenerys' dragoons. Oh, and Cersei is pregnant again with Jaime's child. That makes it 4 for the pirate. Woohoo! The Night King and the Couldn't Catch a Cripple army. Okay, this is walkie crazy. Like, am I missing something? Because this is actually insane. We're talking about 100,000 undead just marching without a care in the world. I mean, they're literally just walking. Call me crazy, but if maybe they decided to run for a change, they could have actually called Bran conflicts. As we have great powers, we should also have great conflicts. And that's exactly what happens this season. The first one we need to talk about is Daenerys vs Cersei. Daenerys vs Cersei is basically a straight up battle for the throne and for control over the not so 7 kingdoms anymore. Cersei somehow manages to be even more unlikable than before, now backed by her mindless bodyguard Sir Gregor, who pretty much serves as her personal hitman. But even Sir Gregor, pumped full of substances only Qyburn and maybe Larry Wills know about, still isn't a 50-meter flying lizard. So naturally the scale shifts heavily in Daenerys' favor, until some interesting stuff happens. The Battle of the Greyjoys. Euron Greyjoy is one filthy little rat, as he ambushes and completely annihilates the Iron Fleet of Theon and Yara, all while capturing Yara and the Mummy of the Sun Snakes. Somehow Theon survives again and gets rescued by a few survivors, eventually making his way to inform Daenerys about the disaster. This whole Theon informing Daenerys thing happens after Jon's visit, and yeah, Jon wasn't exactly happy to see him, but that's not really important right now. After some thinking and a quick talk with Jon, Theon decides that he's going to rescue Yara himself. We'll see how this one turns out. Euron brings Cersei gifts. Remember how Euron promised Cersei he'd bring her a gift the next time they meet? Yeah, he delivers. He brings her the Mummy of the Sun Snakes, her daughter and Yara, which Cersei really appreciates. She returns the favor to the Mummy of the Sun Snakes by poisoning her daughter and forcing her to watch, avenging Marcella in her own twisted way. Yeah, I mean, it's just Cersei. Attack on Casterly Rock. Tyrion comes up with a plan to attack Casterly Rock to rock the Lannister forces. Get it? Because it's Casterly Rock? Yeah, it wasn't funny. Grey Worm and the Unsullied infiltrated without much trouble, but the move was anticipated. Euron Greyjoy and his fleet burn Grey Worm's ships, rendering their return to Daenerys impossible for now. The attack on High Garden. Honestly, I shouldn't even call this an attack, it's a massacre with extra steps, so a very important fact about the Tyrells is that they are filthy rich, and Cersei needs money, because well, Tywin Lannister isn't around to shit goat anymore, and Olenna Tyrell has pledged her loyalty to Daenerys, so Jaime and Bronn roll up and completely eradicate them. Jaime even serves Olenna Tyrell a cup of poison for good measure, and after she drinks it, she casually reveals that she was the one who orchestrated Joffrey's poisoning. Daenerys and her dragoons stomp Jaime and company. So after successfully eradicating the Tyrell name, Jaime, Bronn and Sansa's father who betrayed the Tyrells to help the Lannisters are chilling and transporting their newly acquired gold to King's Landing. But then they hear the screams of the Dothraki, which can completely destroy Jaime's forces. And it's not just the Dothraki. Daenerys shows up too, riding her big dragoon to finish the job. I mean, it's a complete stomp, there's really nothing else to say. Jaime and Bronn barely survive the fight, but Sansa's father and brother aren't so lucky, or maybe they're just stupid enough to rebel against a 50-meter fire-breathing lizard. So Daenerys burns them alive, like father, like daughter. And I guess like Stannis. Tyrion and Davos infiltrate King's Rest to make a deal. Okay, my bad, I kinda skipped this one earlier, but at some point during Jon's mining operation, Tyrion and Davos actually sneak into King's Landing. The whole point is for Tyrion to get a private talk with Jaime. This meeting is basically set up by Bronn, and during their conversation they talk about the Army of the Dead and the need for proof, so Cersei can't just deny everything and maybe cooperate. That whole idea of bringing her evidence pretty much starts here. While Tyrion is doing his thing with Jaime, Davos has his own little side quest. He goes to visit an old friend, and surprise surprise, Gendry is back. So Davos convinces him to leave King's Landing and come with them. After Tyrion finishes his talk with Jaime and Davos grabs Gendry, they manage to sneak out safely and return to Dragonstone, setting up everything that comes next. Jon versus the Undead. This conflict has been building up for a long time, from the first time Jon met the Night King at Hardhome to their encounter this season. It's clear that Jon's number one op is a very committed individual, fully set on wiping humanity off the map. With Jon's new mission to capture an undead as proof to show Cersei, he assembles a squad consisting of Jorah the Andal, Ser Davos the Smuggler, the newly reacquired Gendry Baratheon, and they head to meet Tormund, who's chilling on his side of the wall. Jon explains the situation to Tormund and asks for men to help with the mission. And conveniently enough, Tormund already has someone in mind. These three idiots are currently captives of the wildlings. And after a quick conversation, we learn they are more than happy to cooperate. So off they go. During their journey, they encounter an undead bear, which attacks on sight and nearly kills Taurus in the process. They manage to deal with the bear, but it's already a bad sign. Not long after, they spot an undead patrol, or scout party, and ambush it. Jon kills the White Walker leading them, which causes almost all of the undead to drop instantly. All of them except one. They manage to restrain it, but it starts screaming, and this scream clearly alerts the rest of the army. With disaster incoming, Jon tells Gendry to run back and inform Daenerys about what's happening, so she can help them. Gendry hesitates at first, but eventually agrees. The rest of the group runs towards a frozen lake. They reach the center, and when the undead catch up, they break the ice and fall into the water, leaving Jon's group temporarily safe. Meanwhile, Gendry reaches Castle Black, and somehow a raven is sent to Daenerys at record speed, because we soon see her telling Tyrion that she's going north, even if it's dangerous. Back with our freezing boys, Taurus is pretty much done after everything he's been through. At least they still have their undead gift for Cersei. And then my favorite scene in the entire show happens.
Dumb cunt.
This doesn't end well though, because Sandor misses his next throw, and the stone reveals that the lake has completely frozen over, allowing the undead to attack. A full-on fight breaks out, the party is completely overwhelmed, until Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen first arrives with her dragoons and saves them. Now brace yourself, because from here on, the show becomes painful to watch. Instead of immediately retreating, Jon decides he's going for the Night King, for absolutely no reason, while everyone else is boarding the dragoon. Jon tells them to leave, and he continues fighting. But before they can escape, the Night King pulls out a spear and absolutely one-shots one of Daenerys' dragoons, which shocks everyone, including me, because he didn't go for the dragon carrying the entire crew, the one literally in front of him, the one that wasn't flying. Anyways, Jon tells Daenerys to leave him behind, and she eventually does. Jon gets stuck out into the freezing water, and the Night King and his generals just leave? Why didn't the Night King make sure Jon was dead so he can raise him? But sure, let's assume he realized Jon's plot armor was too strong. Jon somehow makes it out of the water, completely frozen, and just when you think there's absolutely no way he survives this, Benjen appears out of nowhere, throws Jon onto his horse, and saves him, sacrificing himself in the process. So you're telling me the Night King and his entire army did not notice Benjen at all? Was he there the whole time? Did he just spawn in? Honestly, both options are awful. Anyways, Jon's horse reaches the wall, Daenerys is still there, very convenient. They take Jon in, treat him, and he survives. And later Daenerys tells him they'll fight the dead together. Yeah. Jon and Daenerys versus Cersei and the Dead. So now that Jon and Daenerys have officially formed an alliance, the balance of power shifts heavily, because Cersei doesn't really have any friends left. I wonder why. But first let's talk about their meeting in King's Landing, where they're supposed to discuss the Army of the Dead and the gift Jon's party managed to capture. So yeah, long story short, everyone gathers in one place, Cersei sees the undead, they fight it, kill it for good, and Euron Greyjoy immediately nopes out because he's scared of the whole undead situation. Cersei then agrees not to fight Daenerys and Jon while they deal with the dead, on one condition: once it's all over, Jon won't ally with Daenerys to fight Cersei for the throne. Jon doesn't even hesitate, he straight up tells the truth. There's no way that's happening. He and Daenerys are allies now. Cersei absolutely hates that answer and immediately ends the negotiations and leaves. Everyone respects Jon for being honest, but they're still kinda pissed that he said it like that. Tyrion, however, knows this can't end here, so he goes to have a private talk with Cersei. At first, the conversation doesn't go well at all, but eventually they seem to find some kind of common ground. Later, Cersei returns to the negotiation spot and announces that not only she will not interfere while they're fighting the undead, but she will actually help them fight the undead, which is really nice of her and extremely uncharacteristic. And yeah, of course, it's because it's all bullshit. Later, during a private conversation between Jaime and Cersei, we learn that she never had any intention of keeping her word. She was always planning to betray them, doing whatever it takes to win. We also learned that Euron leaving earlier was just for show, he never actually deserted. Jaime doesn't agree with any of this at all. He's a changed man now, someone who actually keeps his word, so he decides to desert Cersei and go north to help fight the real threat. And Jaime isn't the only one heading north. Our heroes begin their return to Winterfell, where everyone will reunite and prepare for what's coming. The ending of season 7. The Dragoon situation. So in episode 6, it's revealed that the Night King can raise animals as well as humans, and no, I don't care that some of his warriors had undead horses before. The undead horses were basically sentient vehicles with close to zero cognitive function, but then in episode 7, he straight up raises Daenerys' dragon, and yeah, that's where it completely loses me. Horses, okay, fine. The undead bear earlier, already pushing it, and that was clearly there just to foreshadow what was coming. But a 50-meter fire-breathing flying lizard? Nah, that's too much. Call me close-minded, call me old-fashioned, this just isn't it. And another thing, where did the chains come from? Like, did they just have them lying around, or? At this point, they might as well start crafting tanks and rolling into Westeros. That whole moment was genuinely painful to watch. I had to pause multiple times to get through it. It felt incredibly poorly thought out and honestly straight up disgusting. The wall breach. So after the Night King raises the dragon, he flies off and destroys the wall in like 20 seconds, and not even the Night's Watch's section of the wall, but Tormund's? Like, what was even the point of the Night's Watch and the wall? I kinda get that it symbolizes the fall of the living Sessua's defense, but still. We fought the Night's Watch for the entire series, and the wall just gets deleted instantly like it never mattered. The Night King doesn't even confront the Watch properly. He literally just goes around them. Like what? It genuinely feels like the moment Jon Snow left the Watch, it became completely irrelevant in every way possible. And another question, how were the undead supposed to cross the wall without the dragon? Were they just gonna climb it? Stack bodies? Build a ladder? Maybe use the chains from earlier? Because without that extremely convenient dragon resurrection, they had absolutely no plan. And speaking of the wall, Tormund and Dundarion were literally right there. If they're somehow dead after this, then what was the point of keeping them alive for so long in the first place? It just doesn't make sense. I think the disappointment mostly comes from the fact that Game of Thrones set its own bar insanely high. The show is genuinely one of the best out there, so when something isn't handled in the best possible way, it stands out way more than it normally would. If this whole ending and dragon situation happened in a weaker show, nobody would really complain, but with Game of Thrones you expect above the best, and it's completely normal to be disappointed sometimes, because no show can realistically break your expectations every single time. That being said, even with all the issues I mentioned, I'm still going to give season 7 a strong 8.5 out of 10, as a little gift from me. We'll just close our eyes this one time for the horrendous ending. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back my sweet little Ewoks. This isn't going to be a normal Kriview, because this season made me so angry, I was low-key about to cry, out of pure hatred. So for this video I don't plan on covering the story in a lot of detail, instead I'm going to go through every single episode of season 8 and scale the disaster that we witnessed. And considering that when I made the video for season 1, I did something I didn't do for the rest of the seasons, which was making predictions for each character and highlighting them, this is kind of similar, but this time I'm going to focus on the positives and the negatives of each episode. Without further introductions, let's jump straight into it. Episode 1. Positives. Everyone gathers at Winterfell. I mean, you just gotta love a reunion. And this one is genuinely wholesome. All the characters we've been following for the entire show finally gather at Winterfell to fight the common enemy. Jon reunites with Arya and Bran. After not seeing each other since Jon left Winterfell to join the Night's Watch back in season 1, it was just really nice to see them reunite. It's one of those moments where you can't help but smile while watching. Theon saves Yara and decides to atone for his sins. After his decision last season to go and rescue Yara, Theon and a few Ironborn infiltrate the ship where she's being held. He manages to save her successfully, they share a sweet moment, and later have a talk. Theon tells her that he wants to return to Winterfell to fight the undead, and Yara basically tells him to do what he feels is right. They say their goodbyes and off he goes, trying to fix his past mistakes and finally do the right thing. Arya reunites with Gendry and the dog. With Jon returning to Winterfell, his whole squad comes back as well, which leads to Arya meeting Gendry and Sandor again. Her interaction with Sandor isn't exactly sweet or heartwarming, but that's kind of their thing, so it works. Her talk with Gendry on the other hand is nothing but sweet, and really awkward, with Gendry even complimenting Arya and calling her beautiful. Daenerys and Jorah revealed the fate of Sansa's father and brother. This part I genuinely liked, even though it was pretty heavy. Sam learns about the fate of his father and brother, which clearly devastates him. It's a bit strange, considering neither of them ever really cared about him. His father even sent him to the Night's Watch to basically freeze off and die, but we won't get into Sam's emotions. What really stood out was the dynamic of the scene itself. Sam is the one who saved Jorah, against all odds, and Daenerys knows that. The moment she realizes that she burned Sam's family alive, she's forced to face the consequences of her actions, on someone who had done nothing but good for her. And maybe, just maybe, that's the moment where it clicks that burning people alive doesn't actually solve every problem. The ending with Jaime and Bran locking eyes. A really nice touch was how Jaime's desertion from Cersei leads directly to him coming face to face with Bran again. That single look between them was so good. You don't need any dialogue. You can just feel the weight of guilt and regret in Jaime's eyes. The Wildlings and the Night's Watch discovered the Umber Child effigy. My highlight of episode 1 was the whole Wildlings and Crows discovery scene. The tension was built really well, and it all leads to the reveal of the Umber Child effigy, which basically sends a clear message. No one is safe. And then the jump scare happens. Honestly, it completely caught me off guard. I was so focused on Tormund talking that I didn't even notice the child's eyes turning blue until it was too late. Negatives. The Lady of Winterfell. Where does this confidence even come from? Has there ever been a single moment in the entire show where Sansa got herself out of trouble on her own without someone else saving her or pushing the situation in her favor? Not with Joffrey, not with Ramsay, not even with Baelish. And yet, starting from last season and continuing into this one, she suddenly acts like some kind of a political mastermind. In reality, the only thing she consistently does is undermine Jon's authority in front of the Northern houses, to the point where some of them openly start doubting him or straight up losing respect for him. This isn't strong female leadership, this is forced conflict created purely for drama. Cersei discovering new level of insanity. After Jaime leaves to actually do the right thing for once, Cersei immediately replaces him with a discount version of him. I guess she really does have a thing for pirates. She sleeps with Euron, then later lies to him and tells him that Jaime's child is his, which we'll get to later, and does all of this without a single shred of hesitation. On top of that, she orders Bronn to assassinate both Jaime and Tyrion, which is kind of wild considering she keeps claiming that everything she does is for her family and for House Lannister, basically trying to echo Tywin's legacy, just without any of the logic, intelligence or consistency behind it. What a great way to protect your family, by killing them first so no one else gets the chance. Brilliant! Sam tells Jon about his true name and heritage. This would normally go straight into the positives, but considering that the biggest and most important battle of the entire show is literally around the corner, dropping this truth bomb on Jon right now feels incredibly irresponsible. Sam is clearly still emotional because of what happened to his father and brother, and during the conversation he even brings up the idea that Jon could sit on the Iron Throne. And yeah, that helps absolutely no one. Not Jon, not the North, and definitely not the upcoming battle for humanity itself. What makes this even worse is that this review barely matters later on. Jon being a Targaryen ends up having almost no real impact on the story or its resolution, but we'll get to that when the time comes. That said, the reunion was nice. I'll give them that. Jon worrying about Gillian baby son was genuinely sweet and felt very in character. Daenerys and Jon's love affair. And now for the worst moment of episode 1, and honestly part of last season as well, Daenerys and Jon's love story. Now I know some people might grab their torches over this, but I don't like their relationship at all. To me it feels completely forced for the sake of the plot, and yes, you could argue that every relationship in fiction exists for plot reasons, but this one appears right at the very end of the series and exists almost entirely to make the final more dramatic. The waterfall scene is another example of their whole relationship. Daenerys talking about staying there forever, hidden from the world, is almost word for word the same fantasy Ygritte once saw Jon in the cave. Instead of feeling poetic, it feels recycled, like the writers ran out of ideas and reused an old emotional beat. At the end of the day, the relationship isn't built to stand on its own, it's there so the final hurts more, and for me that makes it feel less tragic and more artificial. Short opinion of episode 1. All things considered, episode 1 is a strong opening. It delivers on reunions, atmosphere, and a sense of looming danger, and it has enough genuinely good moments to get you invested again, which only makes what follows in the next episodes feel even more questionable. Episode 2. Positives. Jaime's sort of trial. So we get yet another trial in Winterfell, but this time it's for a pirate, not a snake. Progress, I guess. Jaime's trial doesn't exactly start strong, because let's be real, most people there really don't like him. Tyrion is basically the only one on his side, and even that feels like a family bias. And Jaime's CV? Yeah, not exactly something you'd proudly attach to a fighting application. Oath breaking, backstabbing, kingslaying, just hit after hit. And on top of that, he killed Daenerys' father, so naturally she's not thrilled about seeing him breathe the same air as her. Tyrion tries his hardest to help his brother and convince Daenerys to trust him, but trusting the guy who stabbed your dad in the back isn't exactly an easy sell. And Daenerys isn't alone in that. Sansa is right there with her, because Aerys Targaryen isn't the only father Jaime has a history with. To make things worse, Jaime reveals Cersei's real plan, that she never intended to help and has been secretly gathering more troops, which yeah, doesn't make Tyrion look great, considering trusting Cersei was his idea. So now you've got Daenerys and Sansa both against Jaime, Bran casually dropping the things we do for love, like a professional hitman with one-liners, and Jaime's fate is looking absolutely sealed. But then Brienne steps in. She vouches for him, returning the favor for the bear incident, and reminds everyone that he's changed. Jon backs her up with pure logic. They need every capable fighter they can get, and just like that, Jaime earns his place. Not forgiveness, not trust, just a sword and a chance to fight the undead. Good guy Jaime. For once, Jaime is genuinely trying to be a better person. He has a calm, almost wholesome conversation with Tyrion, this time without threatening to split him in half. He treats Brienne with real respect, and with his apology to Bran, he shows a side of him that most people in Winterfell have never seen before. It doesn't erase what he's done, but it clearly shows how far he's come. We as viewers have known about this change for a long time since we followed his journey closely, but for most of the characters, this is the first time they're seeing that growth. Theon returns to Winterfell. Theon finally makes it back to Winterfell and asks Sansa to let him fight for them. Not as a Greyjoy, not as anything else, just as someone trying to do the right thing for once. Sansa accepts him, they share a genuine emotional hug, and just like that, another ally is secured for the coming battle. People afraid of battle. This was a really nice touch. When you're fighting for the survival of humanity, everyone matters, even the people people who've never held a weapon in their lives. Seeing regular folk being forced into a fight they're terrified of made the upcoming battle feel heavier and more real. Jon reunites with Ed and Tormund. I mean, I just love a Night's Watch reunion, and having Tormund there was the cherry on top. It's short, simple, and it instantly brings back that old WoW energy. The drinking game. Some of our favorite characters finally get a moment to breathe, laughing, drinking, and playing Tyrion's old drinking game we first saw back in his scenes with Shae. And after a generous amount of wine, Jaime reveals that a king isn't strictly required to knight someone. A fellow knight can do it too. So he knights Brienne, finally fulfilling the one goal she's been chasing her entire life, becoming a respected knight. Easily one of the strongest and most satisfying moments of the episode. Arya, Sandor, and Beric. I really appreciate the comedic value of this scene. It feels like that moment at a family gathering when you decide to hang out with certain relatives and then immediately regret it and realize you need to leave. Awkward, uncomfortable, and somehow perfect. Sam gives Jorah his family sword. Sam says debt to Jorah Mormont was already paid the moment he saved Jorah's life, so giving away his family sword honestly feels like too much. That said, it's still a really cool moment. Sam knows Jorah is a better fit for the blade, and more importantly, that he'll take good care of it. Final moments before the battle. Podrick singing, people quietly living with the thought that this might be their last moments alive. Simple, calm, and effective. The army inside of Winterfell. Seeing the army of the dead finally within reach and realizing the battle is minutes away was genuinely cool. It low-key reminded me of Stannis' POV when he was marching towards Winterfell. The brothers of the Night's Watch. And my highlight of episode 2 goes to the Night's Watch. The brothers standing tall on the wall of Winterfell felt just like the old days on the wall. Jon talking with Sam and Ted before the battle was a really nice moment. And Ted joking with Sam brought back that old Castle Black energy. It shows that even though they've all walked long, brutal paths and grown a lot, deep down they can't help but return to those golden days, when life was simpler on the wall. Negatives. Daenerys being snappy at everyone except Jon. This is done purely to enhance the romantic aspect, and honestly, I just can't be bothered. When Tyrion makes a mistake, it's the end of the world, and when Jon makes a mistake that literally leads to Daenerys losing one of her dragons, it somehow gets forgotten really quickly. For some reason, Daenerys snaps at everyone except Jon, and yeah, that's because Jon is her lover, which I already said I'm not the biggest fan of. At the same time, she completely disregards the opinions of other people closest to her, people that have proven that even when they make mistakes, they genuinely try to do what's best for her. She does this with Sansa as well, and while Sansa isn't a perfect character by any means, I hate to admit it, but most of the time Daenerys snaps at her, it feels really unnecessary. The War Council. This is another thing I would have normally liked, because all of the fan favorite characters are finally in one place, but I really didn't, and the reason is Bran. Everywhere, in every place, in every form, whenever Bran is around, he's proclaimed as the highest being, the most important person in the room, time and time again. At this point it just feels like an agenda. There's really no other way to put it, because if Bran was actually as important as the show keeps telling us he is, the series would have ended way earlier. His narrow escape from the cave alone already proves how incapable the Night King was at dealing with this so-called important higher being. I mean, it's not like Bran is a cripple, and it's not like he was literally marked, allowing the Night King to know where he is every second of the day, and he still couldn't catch him. I mean, it's whatever, it's just season 8. Jon revealing his heritage to Daenerys right before the battle. This isn't a bad thing in principle. I'd even go as far as to say it was a good thing Jon taught her, but doing it right before the biggest battle of humanity's survival is an insane decision. Let me paint you a picture. If they lose the battle, they all die, so the review doesn't matter. If they win the battle, Jon can tell her afterwards, and no unnecessary chaos is introduced during the fight. I get that Jon is brutally honest and that's his character, but timing still matters, and this was the worst possible timing imaginable. The Arya and Gendry scene. The worst moment of episode 2 is definitely that Arya and Gendry sex scene. This is one of those scenes that had to happen simply because it had to happen, regardless of what was going on. It felt like an anime ship being forced, and I didn't like it one bit, especially knowing it happened purely because it needed to. Throughout the show, Arya repeatedly says that she doesn't see herself as a lady and doesn't want that kind of life. She even shows this earlier with Gendry. Gendry, look how good at darts I am. Asserting herself as a warrior, not a romantic interest. So for her to suddenly initiate intimacy instead of focusing on the upcoming battle feels completely out of character and totally unnecessary. Short opinion of episode 2. While episode 2 is still a relatively strong episode on its own, it already starts dropping heavy hints about what's coming next. The weak plot points begin to surface, some of the questionable decisions from the previous season start taking a clearer shape, and the cracks become more visible. Even though it has genuinely good moments, like the drinking game, the episode still feels like it's not fully up to the task of setting up what's supposed to be the most important battle in the entire series. Episode 3. Positives. I genuinely don't think there is anything positive about this whole battle. If I really have to reach for something, then sure, humanity won. And I guess that's my highlight of the episode. Negatives. The whole battle. And the worst moment of episode 3 is the battle itself. Okay, why was Jon basically out of the battle? As a leader in every battle he's won so far, he's been fighting on the front lines. Here though, he's suddenly on a dragon, without really having the time to learn how to ride one, which is already strange on its own. You could argue that because he's a Targaryen, dragon riding is in his blood, so he can just do it. But considering the fact that Jon's true heritage doesn't even end up mattering later on, I'd argue that his dragon riding wasn't meant to logically come from that, but rather to create a Jon and Daenerys power couple versus the Night King moment. At this point, Jon's spot armor isn't even the biggest issue, because how does Melisandre just appear out of nowhere? The undead are literally everywhere, and yet she casually shows up and lights all of the Dothraki weapons on fire. That's so insane point that I was honestly left speechless. Nah, and let me ask you this. Why did Ted Tollett have to die? I'm going to give you a second. Turururu, turururu. Ding 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 ding. So Jon can take his place at Castle Black later. That's it. That's the reason. No heroic payoff, no meaningful arc conclusion, just a convenient death to clear a spot. Now let's talk about Theon charging the Night King. This wasn't worth the sacrifice that atoned for his past sins. It was reckless and dumb. People forget that Theon is actually a decent fighter. Him charging the Night King head on like that wasn't brave, it was pointless. And honestly, the entire battle is a mess. From Jon and Daenerys chasing the Night King in the air like it's some weird dogfight minigame, to Daenerys suddenly forgetting she's in the middle of a battle. Look, Jon, run! And almost getting herself killed. To the final nail in the coffin, Arya killing the Night King. Let's break this down. Bran literally tells everyone that the Night King always knows where he is because of the mark. So why does the Night King decide to attack Winterfell head on? We already saw the undead piling bodies to climb walls. So what exactly was stopping them from attacking from the sides, overwhelming the defenses and sending everything straight at Bran? If the Night King had committed fully to Bran from the start, he would have won easily. And let's be real, if anyone had to kill the Night King, it had to be Jon. No one else. Jon is the one who discovered the threat. Jon is the one who warned everyone. Jon faced the Night King multiple times. When you think of the Night King, you think of Jon Snow standing against him. And here's the real elephant in the room. Game of Thrones started with the White Walkers. From episode 1, they were framed as the ultimate threat to humanity. We got seasons of build-up, glimpses, teases, small confrontations, and then when it's finally time, the Night King says nothing, does nothing meaningful, and gets one shot by Arya after the battle was already basically won. Arya just jumps straight at him like she's prime 2008 Jeff Hardy from the top rope. And don't even get me started on this part. The Night King catches Arya and doesn't instantly kill her. This is the same guy who threw a spear from hundreds of meters away and pierced a dragon. But he can't snap Arya's neck on the spot. The White Walkers and the Night King were never explored properly because the story became too obsessed with King's Landing and the Iron Throne. And because of that, when the time finally came, the Army of the Dead didn't feel terrifying. It felt rushed, mishandled, and ultimately wasted. Short opinion of episode 3. An absolute disaster of an episode. The battle wasn't even close to being good, and I'll go as far as to say that the Battle of the Bastards was miles better in every possible way. Tension, emotional weight, payoff, everything. Ramsay was a far more compelling villain than the Night King ever was. And that says a lot considering the 7 seasons of build-up leading to this moment. The hype was massive, the setup was there, and the execution completely missed the mark. Overall, it was painfully disappointing. But hey, at least we got to meet Agent 007. 0 words spoken, 0 cripples code, 7 seasons of build-up. Magnificent. Episode 4. Positives. The funeral. I didn't really understand why the bodies needed to be burned considering the Night King was already defeated, but I guess there were simply too many bodies to bury. Nonetheless, seeing our favorite characters say farewell to their loved ones, who also happen to be characters we love, was a solid emotional moment. No battle is won without casualties, and this one was no different. The feast after the battle. I'm mainly putting this into the positives because of Sandor and Tormund. Trust me, I was really close to placing it in the negatives. But this season already has so many of those that I'm giving this 50-50 a pass into the positives. Everyone is celebrating, some more than others, and for me, Sandor and Tormund really stand out. First Sandor, he gives Gendry a much needed reality check, then mostly minds his own business while munching, but every comment he drops is top tier. There's just something about Sandor's blunt, no filter directness that makes everything he says funny. And then there's Tormund. He unfortunately gets rejected by Brienne, which, let's be honest, no one saw coming, and then goes on to celebrate with his fellow wildlings, openly praising Jon right in front of Daenerys, which yeah, she clearly doesn't like. The moment Tormund says the word king, Daenerys instantly goes into a trance, like she just heard the worst thing imaginable. Overall, the feast works pretty well in terms of comedic value, but when it comes to the actual story, I'm not really sure. A positive note for Arya. A bit of redemption finally happens after the feast, because Gendry, now the Word of Storm's End, finds Arya, tells her he loves her, and basically proposes to her, wanting her to be his queen, and she refuses, saying she is no lady, and never has been. That's just not who she is. Before that, Gendry asks her why she isn't celebrating with everyone else, and she simply replies with,
I am celebrating.
while knocking her bow. And yeah, that just feels right. And that's exactly how it was supposed to be. Arya is the complete opposite of Sansa. The one who doesn't chase comfort or pleasure. The one who doesn't want to marry a king or become a lady. I don't know what happened with the earlier scenes, but at least we managed to salvage something meaningful here. Jaime and Brienne's scene. A lot of sex scenes this season, huh? This is pretty much the end result of Jaime's transformation, fully committing to fighting for the good instead of the bad. It might not be the perfect finish line for his arc, but I can respect it enough to give it a positive note. Unfortunately, as a certified Tormund enthusiast, this one kinda hurts my soul, but it is what it is. Bron's had enough of the Lannisters. Honestly, this scene makes perfect sense for Bron. Even if it feels awful to watch, taking Cersei's order to go after Tyrion and Jaime, the only two people you could even loosely call his friends, is crazy. But Bron has always been crazy in exactly this way. He's not a hero, he's not loyal, and he never pretended to be. He's a mercenary, a cutthroat, and someone who has always chosen survival and profit over feelings. So as much as it hurts because we care about Tyrion and some people even care about Jaime, this is just consistency. And using the same crossbow Tyrion used to kill Tywin, that detail alone makes the scene even better. here. It's cold, ironic, and very Game of Thrones-like. Sandor and Arya on their way to King's Landing. No matter how cold or blunt their conversations are, they are always somehow wholesome. Even if Sandor seems frustrated that Arya is tagging along for the ride, deep down if he's not happy, then he's at least content. And honestly, scenes like this just bring back memories of a time when the show wasn't completely butchered. Jon bids farewell to Tormund and Sam. At first I actually put this one in the negatives, mainly because of the ending and how it pretty much negated all the feelings here and the weight of the farewell, but after thinking about it more, if the ending wasn't such a disaster, this scene would have been a really nice one. Jon saying goodbye to Tormund, basically his right hand man, Sam and Gilly revealing they're going to have a child and that if it's a boy, they'll name him Jon. That was genuinely touching. I think the reason it felt weaker at first is because of how everything ends. Jon saying farewell to Tormund here and then they just meet again in the final episode anyway, but taken on its own, this scene works. It's the ending that drags it down, not the moment itself. Tyrion and Varys talk. Two best friends talking, one of them blinded by love, incapable of seeing past the delusion he's created for himself, the other trying his best to make him face the truth, a truth that hurts and is very different from what Tyrion wants to believe, which makes the whole situation not only sad but honestly hopeless. I actually feel bad for Varys here. He sees things for what they really are, but no one believes him simply because they're blinded by love. Varys cementing his cowards. My highlight of episode 4 is Varys. With Varys, I always had this thought in the back of my mind, even when he openly stated that everything he does is for the good of the realm. I was still somewhat skeptical, always expecting some kind of betrayal down the line, but during his conversation with Daenerys, the way he explains why innocent people must not die because of a children's quarrel, with genuine emotions in his eyes, finally revealed to me how he truly feels about the situation. And telling this to Daenerys at that moment, when she was still shaken by Euron's ambush, openly stating an opinion that directly contradicts that of a tyrant, and placing the lives of many above his own, made this a really powerful scene. Sometimes the bravest people are the ones you least expect. Negatives. Daenerys going insane. Throughout the entire show, we are told that she's trying not to become her father, only for her to completely become her father by the end. So what was the point of all the "a child shouldn't bear the sins of their parents" message in Game of Thrones if the child ends up becoming the parent anyway? That would be like the Umber and Karstark heirs turning out exactly like their fathers after Jon pardons them. It would completely invalidate the message. All of that counseling, all of that planning, all of those supposedly good deeds, only for her to just go insane. And sure, we'll talk about the full insanity later, but this part is here for two reasons. First, because it's part of the episode, and second, because of her relationship with Jon. I already explained why I didn't like their romance earlier, but fine, it's in the show, someone might like it, whatever. But why force it so hard if it's going to be overridden by an existential plot point later on? The show spends so much time focusing on love, only for love to suddenly not matter at all because there are bigger things, except those bigger things weren't important when love was the main focus. It doesn't make sense. Instead of feeling proud that her lover is being acknowledged by the people, she becomes jealous that she isn't the center of attention. But then why are we even focusing on love if at the end of the day all she really wants is the throne? Her love for Jon is what brings her north. A completely logical move if her only goal was the throne. But then she later disregards that same love for the throne she was supposedly willing to abandon for it. It's so divided about what it wants to focus on that I'm the one going insane. The War Council before the decision to attack Cersei. Daenerys, fully aware that their forces are exhausted, injured and barely standing after the battle, just decides to attack immediately without a second thought. When Sansa disagrees and points out that this is unreasonable, that the army clearly needs time to recover, Daenerys simply insists on marching south anyway. What shocked me the most though is Jon's reaction. He doesn't defy her, he doesn't even seriously question it. He just says they'll keep their word, and that's it. And let's be honest, he agrees because he loves Daenerys. This is completely uncharacteristic of Jon. Jon fully understands that sending an unfit army into another war will only lead to more deaths, more injuries, and more unnecessary suffering. Waiting is clearly the better option. Yet he sides against reason. Now you could argue that this is in character because Jon values honesty and keeping his word above all else, but that argument falls apart when you look at his past. Jon has already gone against truth when blindly following it would lead to disaster. The clearest example is when he was captured by the wildlings. He didn't abandon the idea of being a crow, but he also didn't reveal it to Mance immediately. He waited, understood the consequences, and only revealed the truth when the moment was right. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't at least argue with Daenerys here, especially given the potential consequences. And don't get me wrong, I really dislike Sansa and her opinions most of the time, but here she was right. Jon disagreeing with her not because of logic, strategy or morality, but because of love, just further forces this romance and breaks Jon's character piece by piece to make it work. Jon revealing his heritage to the Starks. At this point I genuinely started wondering if even Jon knows which side he's on anymore. Jon has always been a family man, even as a bastard, protecting his family, whether that meant the Starks or the Brothers of the Night's Watch, was always at the core of who he was. He stood by them, even when he had already given up on himself, like during the battle against Ramsay. But since season 7, his affair with Daenerys has split him right down the middle. And sure, if the show wants to go all in on that romance, fine, I don't like it, some people might, whatever. That's not even the main issue. The issue is this: after he decides to side with Daenerys at the War Council, he then turns around and reveals his true heritage to his family, a family that, if you somehow haven't noticed by now, does not trust Daenerys at all. And let's be real, Sansa hearing that information was a disaster waiting to happen. The moment Jon says it, you can already tell she's thinking about Tyrion or Varys. That reveal doesn't unite anyone, it just throws throws gasoline on an already burning fire. If Jon wanted to side with Daenerys, that would at least be consistent. If he wanted to side with the Starks, that would also make sense. But doing both at the same time just makes him indecisive and reckless. And as the saying goes, when someone chases two rabbits, he catches neither. Sansa and Tyrion se talk on the Winterfell wall. So Sansa snitches on Jon literally right after he tells her the truth. Tyrion in return snitches on Daenerys by admitting that he's afraid of her. At this point everyone is just snitching on everyone. And yeah, let's be fair, it is Jon's fault for telling someone like Sansa in the first place. That was never going to end well. But Sansa betraying him almost immediately, hiding it behind the excuse that men in our family don't do well in the capital, and that she's doing this to protect Jon just wasn't it. If you actually want to protect someone, you don't expose the one piece of information that puts their life in danger. What she does doesn't save Jon, it puts him directly in the crosshairs. So no matter how you spin it, this wasn't some clever political move or a noble act of concern, it was betrayal, plain and simple. Euron's ambush. So let me get this straight. Bronn once sniped Wildfire from a much greater distance and still didn't land a fatal hit on a dragon with a scorpion, but Euron's crew suddenly turns into a burst fire death squad and lands multiple consecutive hits like it's nothing. And yeah, I know, but the dragon was injured, he couldn't fly properly. Except, it really doesn't look like he was struggling to fly at all, and after the first direct hit, injured or not, speeding away wasn't really an option anymore. The only way the dragon survives is if Euron's men miss some of their shots, which they just conveniently don't. But a Greyjoy never misses an arrow. Sure, but Bronn has better range feats than all of the Greyjoys combined so far, and even if the scorpion is different from a bow, we've already seen the Night King miss Daenerys with a spear back in season 7. My point isn't that the dragon shouldn't have been hit at all, one hit would have been fine, but multiple perfect shots in a row that instantly kill it? That's insane. And then after taking out the dragon, Euron's fleet wipes out Daenerys' ships and somehow manages to capture Missandei out of everyone in the water. In all that chaos, they specifically managed to spot her and just yoink her. Yeah, crazy work. Cersei tells Euron Jaime's shout is his, plus Missandei's capture. When the war is won, the lion shall rule the land, the kraken shall rule the sea. So I guess Cersei is doing all of this for the survival of the Lannister name and for her and Jaime's shout, right? Except not really. Earlier, she tells Jaime she wants people to see them together, she talks about the future, about finally being open, and then, without hesitation, she turns around and tells Euron that the shout is his, which is awful in the most Cersei way possible, because she's basically recreating her entire situation with Robert, lying about the father, using command for power and protection, while keeping Jaime in the shadows. And no matter how you look at it, that is a betrayal of Jaime. Just Cersei. As for Missandei's capture, we'll get into that in more detail later. Sansa allows Brienne to tell Jaime about Euron's ambush. So Jaime is just a friend now? Since when? Why is he being informed about what's happening in the war at all? One single battle doesn't erase everything he's done. Yeah, he is trying to be better and yes, he has changed in many ways, but that doesn't automatically make him a fully trusted ally, especially not someone you casually brief on major war developments. And Sansa of all people allowing this feels weird? She's skeptical of everyone, constantly questioning motives and loyalty, but suddenly Jaime gets a pass? It feels really inconsistent with how cautious she's been with literally everyone else. I don't know, this one just doesn't sit right with me. Missandei's execution. I didn't really mind Grey Worm and Missandei's relationship, that doesn't mean I loved it, but it also didn't annoy me the way that Jon and Daenerys did. Using it purely as a shock value though, yeah, that's where it loses me. It's painfully obvious what this scene is meant to do. Reignite Daenerys' conflict with Cersei. For most of this season, and a big part of the last one, the focus was on the undead, not Cersei. Once the Night King is dealt with, they needed to flip the switch back to the final boss, and shock value was the fastest way to do it. But this just wasn't the right way. If the final was always meant to be about Cersei instead of the Night King, which I already don't agree with, but fine, whatever, then at least earn it. Don't force it through a poorly set up execution. The problem isn't Missandei dying, it's how we got there. The ambush, the capture, the convenience of it all just feels gross and unearned. It doesn't feel tragic, it feels manufactured. Jaime abandons Brienne and returns to Cersei. And the worst moment of episode 4 goes to Jaime's decision. We're talking about 7 seasons of character development being thrown out the window in one scene. From the arrogant, scummy noble in Winterfell, to his capture and eventual crippling, losing the very hand that defined him. From saving Brienne from the bear, to finally leaving Cersei behind, symbolically abandoning the worst part of himself. All of that growth brought him back to Winterfell as a changed man, only for it to be shattered by a single decision. Earlier, I even placed Jaime's arc on the positive side, because the show was still following the idea that he had changed, that losing his hand forced him to grow, to keep his word, to fight for something better, and then they just undo it. He doesn't struggle, he doesn't hesitate, he just goes back to being the same man he was before, as if none of it mattered. No payoff, no internal conflict, just regression. It's really a shame. Short opinion of episode 4. Yeah, this is where the season really breaks its own spine. Even if the first 3 episodes weren't up to standard, you could still see what they were trying to do, there were ideas you could defend, character beats you could argue for. Episode 4, this is the moment where the drop stops being a swap and turns into a cliff. If I had to pinpoint why the final ended up the way it did, it absolutely starts here. This episode builds the ramp for disaster. The earlier episodes weren't great, but they weren't this aggressively careless. And Jaime, why just Just why? He was one of the most compelling characters in the entire show, precisely because his arc was about change, consequence, and self-awareness. Losing his hand wasn't just physical punishment, it was narrative discipline, and now he's reduced to a puppet, dragged wherever the plot needs him, saying things he doesn't believe just to justify a reversal the story didn't turn. And that problem spreads everywhere. Season 8 has this horrific pattern where every character you once liked becomes either unreasonable, unlikable, or outright unrecognizable. Not because they evolved, but because the writing forces them into shortcuts. John becomes a passive bystander to his own morals, surrendering his judgment to a romance that actively contradicts who he's been for 7 seasons. Tyrion, once the sharpest mind in the room, suddenly can't treat people he's known his whole life. Jaime's growth is crushed for shock value. None of this feels like tragedy, it feels like neglect. And that's the worst part. It's not that these characters fall, it's that their past no longer matters. How are we supposed to keep liking John when his defining trait, moral independence, disappears? How are we supposed to care about Jaime when the very thing that made him special is erased? How do you take Tyrion seriously when he's a shadow of his former self? They aren't tragic figures anymore, they are shells wearing familiar faces. So yeah, feeling betrayed makes total sense. Not betrayed by the characters, but by the story that promised their journeys meant something. And honestly, you'll be right to single out Varys. Man stood on business. No romance fuck, no denial, no self-delusion. Quietly consistent to the very end. In a season full of people losing their spines, the so-called bowless eunuch had the biggest ones in the room. Episode 5. Positives. The people of King's Landing. It's easy to forget that King's Landing isn't just the throne room and the Red Keep. It's a city full of people. Families, children, regular lives. Just like every other town we've seen in the show. That's what makes this hit harder. When Cersei pulls everyone into the city center, these people don't see it as a tactical shield. They genuinely believe it's for their protection. To them, the crown is still supposed to protect them, not use them. I think something the later seasons really lost was this perspective. The common people were never the main focus, but earlier on we at least got glimpses, Flea Bottom, Marjorie visiting orphans, small moments that reminded us these wars always had victims beyond the nobles. It would have been even more effective if we had seen more of their lives leading up to this, but even as it is, this moment works. It reminds us that what's about to happen isn't just the fall of a ruler, it's the destruction of an entire city full of people who never chose any of this. Arya and the dog reach their destination. Sandor straight up turns into Arya's dad in this scene. She casually tells the guard she's here to kill Cersei, and instead of shutting him down, Sandor just rolls with it. Even backs her up and strengthens the case. I don't know why, but that dynamic is just hilarious. The way he fully accepts it like, yeah, that checks out. Makes the whole scene way funnier than it has any right to be. Varys' final push plus his attempt at Jon. And the highlight of episode 5 goes to Varys again.
Man, the first time was so nice, I had to do it twice.
Honestly, Varys might be the MVP of the season. The last genuinely reasonable character left, the only one who stayed true to his principles till the very end, untouched by the forced love affair shoved in our faces every 5 minutes. This is his final move, going to Jon. And when the door shuts right in front of him too, he knows it's over. So he does the only thing left. He tries to make it count. Negatives. I'm gonna tell Daenerys. Is this even Tyrion? Like, is this the same person who killed his own father? And speaking of that scene, do we remember who helped him escape certain death afterwards? Varys. Jaime too, but he's not the focus right now. Varys saved him. Stopped him from rotting away or drowning in wine. And this is how Tyrion repays that? By betraying him straight to a literal tyrant. What makes it worse is that even Tyrion himself wasn't even sure about Daenerys. He openly told Sansa he fears her. So now we're in this weird love-fear limbo where that's enough for him to sell out the one person who actually stood by him when no one else did. That doesn't really feel like Tyrion. Varys' execution. So Jon betrays Daenerys by telling the Starks. Sansa tells Tyrion, Tyrion tells Varys, and Daenerys executes Varys. Jon, Sansa and Tyrion all walk away completely fine. Apparently you can leak the biggest secret in the realm as long as you're close enough to Jon. Yes, Daenerys never fully trusted Varys and warned him that his next misstep would be his last. But Varys didn't discover anything through his spy network. He learned it from Tyrion, who learned it from Sansa, who learned it from Jon. So why is Varys the only one paying for it? Why isn't Tyrion punished or Sansa or Jon? It clearly serves the narrative, but it just doesn't feel right. If she actually wanted to make an example of treason, executing Tyrion and Varys together right in front of Jon would have made way more sense. I don't have love here, I only have fear. What are we even saying at this point? I don't know, maybe don't burn people alive next time? Just a thought. And the biggest simp of them all replies with,
I love you.
This is supposed to be a serious heavy moment, but it just completely collapses under how absurd it is. Jon isn't conflicted, he isn't questioning anything, he just stands there and reaffirms his love like nothing happened. The second he said that, I was genuinely fuming. Not because it was tragic, but because it made no sense for his character, for the situation, or for the weight the scene wanted to have. Tyrion suddenly decides killing innocents ain't the deal. After snitching on Varys for doing the right thing, Tyrion suddenly realizes that maybe Varys was right. Crazy how that works. So he goes to Daenerys and basically begs her, please don't massacre King's Landing if the bells ring. wearing? Daenerys, of course. Looks like she's absolutely not buying it. No reassurance, no hesitation, just that cold stare. Then Daenerys casually mentions that Jaime's being captured after he headed south to see Cersei. Don't worry, we'll come back to this later. At this point, Tyrion isn't making decisions. He's reacting to the consequences of his own bad ones. Tyrion asks Davos for a favor. Why does Davos even go along with this? It's not like they're sneaking into King's Landing to free Gendry or negotiate some kind of a deal. Davos knows exactly what Tyrion is planning, that he's going to free Jaime, and he still helps him. This is really strange coming from Davos. Tyrion frees Jaime. At this point, the amount of recycled scenes is genuinely exhausting. It feels like half of the season is just earlier moments copy-pasted with worse context. Jaime getting captured and freed again, Arya and Sandor's journey again, Daenerys and Jon having their dramatic waterfall scene that's clearly mimicking Jon and Ygritte, Cersei lying to Euron about the child just like she did with Robert. If recycling worked like this, the planet would have been saved already. And then there's Tyrion, another spineless moment added to the pile. I'm honestly at a stage where I'm questioning whether this is even remotely close to book Tyrion anymore, because this version feels like a shadow of the character we used to know. If anyone's read the books, please tell me. I'm genuinely curious. 20,000 Golden Company soldiers. Am I tripping, or does this not look like 20,000 soldiers? Because I actually stopped and checked. The combined forces of Jon and Ramsay at the Battle of the Bastards were roughly half of that. And those armies felt massive, visually overwhelming, chaotic, dense. Now you're telling me the Golden Company has double that number, and what we see on screen is this? I'm not nitpicking numbers for the sake of it, I'm going after consistency. If the show could convincingly portray a 10,000-ish army seasons ago, then portraying 20,000 later should have been even easier, especially with a bigger budget and better tech. Instead it feels scaled down, empty and weirdly weightless, and that kills immersion, not because the number itself matters, but because the show taught us what large armies are supposed to look like, and then ignored its own precedent. If one battle could sell it, another one could too. This just feels lazy. Jaime versus Euron. This fight had to happen. The Kraken versus the Lion. A battle for custody over Cersei's child. Honestly, it's the Game of Thrones version of Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero for custody of Dominic Mysterio. Jaime is basically a walking corpse here. He takes an insane amount of damage, bleeds out half his body weight, and somehow keeps fighting. None of it really matters though, because the fight isn't about tension. We already know Jaime has to get to Cersei. This isn't a duel, it's a checkpoint. I still don't know how Euron even survived up to this point, but sure he did. And somehow he also ends up on the exact same hidden path Jaime is using to reach Cersei. How? No idea. Euron might just be a psychic at this point. If Jaime hadn't finished him off, we probably would have gotten the 3-eyed Kraken to rival the 3-eyed Brandon. In the end, Jaime gets the dub and continues on his way to his beloved sister. Because of course he does. The final battle. This one was pretty obvious, wasn't it? The worst moment of the episode being the battle itself. It's honestly impressive how every major battle in Game of Thrones before this ranged from good to near perfect, and then we get this one and the Night King battle, both of which feel more like chores than actual experiences. We already talked about Jaime versus Euron, but I have to bring Euron again. So let me get this straight. During his ambush, they instantly snipe a dragon out of the sky, no problem, but now, suddenly they can't hit one even once? Interesting, very interesting. As for Jon, since he's technically present, he's basically been reduced to a background NPC. Arya gets more screen time than him. He's just there, waiting for episode 6 to finish the job and ruin his character properly. Now let's address the elephant nuking the room. Daenerys burning all of King's Landing. If I'm feeling a little slimy, I could say this is just another recycled scene, because a city being obliterated to send a message feels oddly familiar to the Sept of Baelor, but fine, we will let that one slide. At first I genuinely wondered why the plot suddenly turned her insane, rushed her character, and forced a love story that clearly wasn't meant to exist. Then it hit me. This was the fastest way to end everything. 3 episodes for the Night King, 3 episodes for King's Landing, boom, done. How do you finish the story quickly? You kill or neutralize everyone who can move the plot forward. Then toss Jon back to the Night's Watch like it's season 1 again. Simple. No one left to do anything interesting. The story just ends. Daenerys burning King's Landing was the easiest and fastest way to do that.
I don't have love here. I only have fear.
It's a rush decision meant to wrap things up, nothing more. There is really no point over analyzing it. The only part of the battle I genuinely enjoyed was the dog versus his substance abusing zombie brother. The fight was brutal, direct and weirdly funny at times, and Sandor pushing the mountain into the fire, the thing he feared most, was actually poetic. Revenge becoming bigger than the man himself is something Sandor talked about for seasons, and he finally cements it. Now speaking of the dog, let's talk about Arya. Why was she even in King's Landing? Let's be honest, she's there purely as a camera lens for civilian suffering. She exists to run through the streets so we can feel how bad it is, and I get the intention, but this doesn't work for me. We all knew Arya wasn't going to die. Between the narrative setup and her killing the Night King, there was zero tension, so instead of making the tragedy stronger, her presence actually weakens it. The destruction is powerful enough on its own. Using Arya to scream, "Look, innocent people are dying," just feels forced. Finally, Jaime and Cersei dying together. I'm split on this. On one hand, they started everything together, so ending together makes symbolic sense. On the other hand, Jaime shouldn't have been there at all. Having a villain stay a villain is fine, giving a villain a redemption arc is fine, but giving them a redemption arc, then undoing it, then having them comfort the worst villain in the show in a way that humanizes both, that's just disappointing. Short opinion of episode 5. If you wanted Daenerys to go insane, fine. If you wanted her to love Jon and have them end up at the throne, or just her, also fine, but you need build up for that. Instead we get a dragon dying out of nowhere, someone calling Jon king once, and suddenly she's fully deranged. That kind of turn doesn't work without proper setup, it just feels rushed. What makes it even worse is the way love is handled. The show tells us Daenerys is completely in love with Jon, yet she goes insane over power and the throne. Those two things don't really coexist in the way they're portrayed here. If Jon truly mattered more than anything, then the throne wouldn't suddenly outweigh him. At this point the show is just juggling themes, love, madness, destiny, power, without committing to any of them. It's a strange decision to say the least. Episode 6. Positives. Arya's ending. I guess my highlight of episode 6 is Arya's ending. If there is one ending I can genuinely get behind in the entire show, it's hers. Her choosing to leave Westeros and sail into the unknown actually fits her character perfectly. She was never meant to rule, never meant to settle, never meant to play the game. From the very start, Arya was about movement, freedom, curiosity, and rejecting the road the world tried to force onto her. An ending built around exploration and adventure is exactly where she should land. And that's what makes it frustrating. Because if the writers clearly understood where Arya was supposed to end up, then why was her character handled so poorly along the way? Why turn her into an invisible plot device, strip her struggles of weight, and trash her growth, only to suddenly remember who she's supposed to be at the very end? They got the destination right, they just completely butchered the journey. Negatives. First moments after the battle. Oh look guys, love suddenly isn't that cute anymore. When your crush burns an entire city to the ground, right? Maybe tell her you love her again, Jon. Especially when she states that in Westeros, she has fear, not love. We're watching the two most rational characters in the entire series finally realize what's happening, after they've already been completely played. And they don't look tragic or conflicted, they look like absolute fools. And that should never have been the case. Before this season, hell even before the last one, did anyone see Jon or Tyrion as idiots? No, they were respected, intelligent characters, each with a strong sense of justice and clear principles. Now they are reduced to a laughingstock, waking up way too late to consequences they should have seen coming miles away. Their characters are completely ruined, and somehow against all odds, it still gets worse. Jon closes his eyes to injustice. Remember when I said that Game of Thrones likes to slowly undermine its characters, making them less and less likable before something bad happens to them? This scene is another clear example of that. Jon does try to stop Grey Worm, briefly. He says something, realizes Grey Worm isn't listening, and then just gives up. No persistence, no authority, no real pushback. And that's the problem. Jon Snow has never been a character who backs down that easily when innocent lives are on the line. His strongest moments always came from standing his ground, even when it put him at risk, even when the odds were against him. Here he could have pressed harder, he could have ordered Grey Worm to stand down, he could have said he'd take it up with Daenerys, he could have delayed it, escalated it, anything. Instead, after a half-hearted attempt, he walks away and lets it happen, and that's what feels wrong. Ask yourself honestly, when you watch that scene, did it feel like something Jon Snow would normally do? Would that Jon Snow let it slide? Because to me that wasn't Jon. That was the show bending his character to fit where it wanted him to end up. Tyrion says despair. He really did love them, that much is clear, but still, he should have been prepared for this moment. From the second he decided to side with Daenerys, this outcome was always on the table. Even if he truly believed she was a merciful ruler, there was always the possibility that Cersei would be executed. And with everything that happened before this point, Tyrion, who is constantly portrayed as the smartest man in the room, completely excluding the possibility of becoming the last Lannister standing, is just another form of the same delusion we've been seeing from him for a while now. This might sound cold, but I'm not saying he shouldn't grieve. Of course he should. What I'm saying is, when he's clearing the rubble, what exactly did he expect to find? After seeing the exit completely collapsed, did he genuinely believe Jaime and Cersei were alive? His reaction does humanize them in a way. Tyrion breaking down shifts the emotion from his woes to their deaths, because if they were alive, he wouldn't be crying like that. So the scene is clearly trying to make us feel for them through him. But here's the issue. If Jaime hadn't completely nuked his character development, maybe this would have worked. Tyrion and Jaime had a real bond, so humanizing Jaime through Tyrion makes sense. But Cersei? No. Absolutely not, no way. Personally, during this scene, I felt more disappointment than sadness. Disappointment that this is how it was handled. And how can I even take this scene seriously when Tyrion starts hitting Kriview with a brick like a caveman? Bend the knee becomes a necromancer. So let me understand this properly. We didn't have the CGI or whatever excuse to make the Golden Company look bigger, scarier, and actually feel like 20,000 men. But after Daenerys wins, she's standing in front of an army that somehow looks even bigger than the first time we ever saw it. So my only logical conclusion is Daenerys just might be a necromancer. Because if I remember correctly, after the undead absolutely demolished the Dothraki, no more than 10 of them survived the battle. Maybe. Generously. And now suddenly we're looking at, what, at least 11 of them? But somehow this isn't even the worst part of the scene. A few moments later, Tyrion finally confronts Daenerys about the destruction of King's Landing. He throws away his handpin, resigns, and openly defies her. This should be massive. And Daenerys? She doesn't rage, she doesn't argue, she doesn't even really react. She just has him arrested. Like he mildly inconvenienced her. No weight, no gravity, she doesn't take it seriously at all. Jon is right there too, and she basically just ignores him. At this point in the show, Daenerys hasn't just gone mad, she's ascended, with her newly acquired necromancer powers and her complete immunity to consequences. Oh, and Arya is still in King's Landing, just kind of sniffing around, watching things happen, for reasons I genuinely don't understand. Screen time, I guess. What are we even doing at this point? Jon visits Tyrion in prison, so Jon goes to visit Tyrion in prison, and during their conversation, Jon drops this absolute gem.
She's not her father, no more than your Tywin Lannister.
I mean, come on. This is a full-on clown fiesta at this point. I genuinely don't even know what to say anymore without repeating myself or stating the painfully obvious, but this scene is actually a brilliant example of viewer brainwashing, and I mean that unironically. Look at how it's framed. Tyrion is suddenly the rational one, calm, reflective, reasonable. Jon is the delusional one, emotional, naive, blindly loyal. And wouldn't you know it, Tyrion gets a good ending, while Jon gets possibly the worst ending in the entire show. These are exactly the predispositions I was talking about earlier. The show actively destroys Jon's character just to make his disgusting ending feel earned or logical. They mock him narratively, so when the hammer finally drops, the audience goes, yeah, I guess this makes sense. And honestly, that's top tier manipulation, because if you rewatch this season 5 times, yeah, it might start to feel coherent. You start thinking the ending naturally grew out of these scenes, but the problem is, these scenes should not exist in the first place. This isn't development, it's character assassination for the sake of a rushed plot. Season 7 and 8 Jon, and seasons 1 through 6 Jon are essentially two completely different characters. I mean, it's just season 8, whatever. Jon murders Daenerys. The simple fact that I had to rewatch these scenes multiple times to make this video just makes me angrier every single time. So Daenerys finally reaches her goal, the throne she's been chasing her entire life, and then Jon walks in. They start talking and Jon, who has apparently just remembered who he is, suddenly starts yelling at her for burning the city and murdering children. Welcome to Earth. How was the afterlife? Jetlag treating you okay? And then they kiss. They kiss. I mean, it's just season 8. You honestly have to admire how borderline insane this whole thing is. Right after the kiss, Jon kills Daenerys, and then the BBD pulls up, looking extra pissed. The Dragoon melts the Iron Throne, because symbolism I guess, grabs Daenerys' body and flies away. If Daenerys can't have the throne, no one will. Straight Todor behavior, by the way. And yes, BBD stands for Big Black Dragoon. This scene right here is a perfect example of why I hate love affairs in shows, and this one in particular might be one of the worst ones I've ever seen. It genuinely feels like before Jon and Daenerys fell in love, the show still had a soul. Even if people dislike season 6, I personally like it. It still had that Game of Thrones DNA, dark fantasy, unpredictability, moral tension, the insanity of battles like the Battle of the Bastards. Now, none of that is left. The show feels closer to Love Island than dark fantasy. The unpredictability isn't clever anymore. It's either painfully obvious or just straight up nonsense. Scenes get recycled, logic collapses, and characters are sacrificed to push a romance that actively makes everything worse. And this moment is both the result of that love affair and the reason it ruins everything. If this relationship never existed, we would have watched a very different series. Would it still have been butchered eventually without book material? Probably. But this just sped up the execution and made it embarrassing. Tyrion's trial. I'm just gonna give you a second to actually look at the people sitting in judgment here. We won't even mention the ones I genuinely have no idea who they are, but let's go through the highlights. We've got someone who was breastfed until he was 6, someone who spent the entire show in Walder Frey's basement, the newly freed Yara who disappeared for 2 seasons, the Lady of Winterfell herself, the mystical cripple, Jeff Hardy, and a guy whose greatest achievement is running away really fast. I like Brienne and Davos, nothing bad about them, but everyone here is completely free. Meanwhile, Jon Snow, the guy who saved the realm about 15 times, is rotting in a cage. Yeah, totally serious trial. Absolute cinema. Next. Tyrion visits Jon in jail. Am I tripping, or didn't we just do this scene a few minutes ago? Oh right, my bad. Last time it was Jon visiting Tyrion in a cell. Same conversation, same moral debate, just with Jon on the inside this time, quietly absorbing the final stages of his character assassination. Jon says goodbye to the Starks. Honestly, if I were in Jon's shoes, after everything that happened, I wouldn't even want to see these 3, but of course we get the goodbye scene. Jon meets them, exchanges a few emotional glances, says his farewells, and heads off to Castle Black, banished for saving the realm. As one does, leaving Cat, Ed and Eddie behind to rule, explore, and vibe. Short, quiet and whole, which is kind of perfect actually, because that's exactly how Jon's entire ending feels. Brienne finishing Jaime's war in the Kingsguard book. This could have been a good plot point, Jaime wanting to atone for his sins, to grow as a person, to become better. That journey was genuinely nice, the whole Oathkeeper thing was nice, him leaving Cersei to fight for the living was nice, but the ending completely ruins it. Jaime returns to square one, so Brienne finishing his Kingsguard entry like this feels wrong. It's not the ending he deserved, because he didn't finish his journey. It's like quitting in the middle of a marathon and still getting the medal for completing it. He made his choice, he chose to go back, and because of that he shouldn't be rewarded as if he completed the arc and became the man he was trying to be. The new small council. I want you to really look at this group of people and ask yourself one simple question. Does this feel like the best Westeros can do? There's nothing wrong with a lighthearted ending scene, but this is supposed to be the governing body of the realm after the most destructive war in its history. And instead of feeling earned or deliberate, it feels random, like positions were filled based on availability rather than competence. What makes it worse is that the show already had a far more coherent setup right there, if the season had gone differently. Let me paint you a picture of what the Smoke Council could have been like if the story actually respected its own characters. Queen Daenerys. If the season committed to her instead of rushing her downfall, this is where everything logically leads. Hand of the Queen, Tyrion. Fault? Yes, but still one of the few people with real administrative experience and political instinct. Master of Ships, Yara. An obvious choice, naval power, leadership, experience, and a vested interest in stabilizing the seas. Master of Coin, Davos. This might sound surprising, but it actually makes sense. Davos understands trade, scarcity, and logistics better than most nobles. He has dealt directly with the Iron Bank of Bravos, and most importantly, isn't corrupt. That alone puts him ahead of half the realm. Master of Whisperers, Bran. If the show was absolutely set on placing Bran in King's Landing, this is the only position that actually makes sense for him. His ability to see into the past, and potentially the future, turns him into an all-seeing intelligence network without spies, bribes, or manipulation. That said, this role already had a perfect owner, Varys. He didn't just gather information, he understood how and when to use it, and more importantly, why. Varys served the realm, not a ruler, and killing him off removed the one character whose entire existence justified this position. Master of Walls, Jon Snow. Jon is the natural choice here. Across the entire series, he consistently puts duty above self-interest, enforces justice, even if it costs him personally, and understands both mercy and consequence. He's respected by commoners and nobles alike, and his authority comes from actions, not titles. Realistically, this role could have also suited Jorah Mormont, a man shaped by exile, dishonor, and eventual redemption, with a deep understanding of woe, punishment, and loyalty, but as with Varys, it would be cheating to pick him. Master of War, Grey Worm. A proven commander with no interest in politics, exactly what you want in that role. Grandmaster Sam. This one actually works. Sam has the knowledge and the willingness to learn, which already puts him ahead of most maesters we've seen. The frustrating part isn't that the show chose different people, it's that it chose people without clearly justifying why they belong there. If Bran had to be in King's Landing, he should have been Master of Whisperers. If Varys had to die, it shouldn't have been in a way that erased the purpose of his character. Instead, we get a council that feels less like the future of Westeros and more like the leftovers after a rushed ending. Yeah, it just season 8, whatever. King Bran. I'm at the point where this is so ridiculous that I can't even get mad anymore. He can't walk. He speaks in riddles like he's some kind of a sphinx. He did nothing, and I mean nothing, for the entire story except revealing Jon's heritage, which ended up not mattering at all. And if this guy is such a genius, transcendent being, how did he not foresee the burning of King's Landing? You'd think the three-eyed raven, the all-seeing mastermind, might notice a city about to get nuked. Now look, if Bran was secretly orchestrating the entire Game of Thrones from the shadows, fine. Make him the final villain or the ultimate puppet master. That would at least be interesting, but as things stand, he was completely useless. Jon had more impact on the fight against the Night King than Bran did, and that fight was literally Bran's entire purpose. Oh, and he wouldn't have even made it to the Three-Eyed Raven if it wasn't for the people who died protecting him. People he immediately disregarded the moment they were no longer useful. Didn't acknowledge their sacrifices, didn't honor them, just sat there, staring into the void like a proper king would. And no, I don't care that he gave Arya the dagger. Arya shouldn't have killed the Night King in the first place. The only thing Bran successfully prevented in the entire series was his own death. Even with all his knowledge, he didn't prevent anyone else's. Take Theon for example. His death was completely preventable. If Bran knew Arya was going to kill the Night King anyway, telling Theon to stay back and guard him would have done wonders. And don't tell me Theon staying wouldn't have created the opening. Arya's jump wasn't created by an opening, it just happened. Prime Jeff Hardy came flying with a swanton bomb. Even Arya, a borderline assassin by the end, saved more lives than Bran ever did, and she doesn't even see the future. But sure, oh hail the new king. If the season ended with Bran smiling or something like that, I might have accepted the idea that he was the evil mastermind pulling the strings, or the Three-Eyed Raven finally infiltrating humanity to destroy it from within. But as it stands, there are no clear signs that this was ever thought out that way. Sansa being the only Stark in Winterfell. How is this even fitting for her? She was the Stark who wanted to leave Winterfell the most in season 1, dreaming about South, marrying Joffrey, bearing his children, and becoming a queen. That was her entire goal. And now suddenly, in the later seasons, she's all about the North, about tradition, about staying in Winterfell and ruling for the people. That shift is insane. And before anyone brings up the whole Snow Winterfell castle thing in the Eyrie, I don't really buy it. It was convenient nostalgia. There is nothing wrong with wanting to return home, but don't act like this was always the life she wanted, because it clearly wasn't. I wouldn't even have a problem with Sansa being one of the Starks in Winterfell. That would make sense, but her being the only figure of authority there after everything that happened just doesn't feel right. The only Stark who was truly about the North from start to finish was Jon, and yeah, we all know how that turned out. Jon returning to the Night's Watch. Honestly, you could pick almost any negative moment in this episode as the worst one, but somehow this still takes the cake. Oh, now I get it. I finally cracked Game of Thrones. So Jon starts as a bastard, goes to the Night's Watch in season 1, grows as a character, fights countless life-threatening battles, literally saves humanity multiple times, and once his entire journey is complete, he ends up right back at the Night's Watch. But now he's a Targaryen, with none of his friends, with no real threat beyond the wall, with his heritage not mattering at all, and as a Queenslayer. That's it. That's the story. bring the curtains. The character who arguably deserved the most, and let's be honest, is probably the fan favorite, got absolutely wronged in every possible way. Brilliant, truly brilliant. Short opinion of episode 6. I genuinely don't think there was a worse possible way for the show to end than this. The two main protagonists we've been following for the entire series get done dirty in the worst ways imaginable. Even Gendry, who was basically non-existent for most of the show, somehow ends up with a better ending than both Jon and Daenerys combined. Was Bran's suffering in any way greater than Jon's or Daenerys's? Was his path more difficult? Was his sense of justice more absolute? Is he genuinely better suited to rule? And this is the foreshadowing I was highlighting. Jon not killing the Night King feels less like a bold narrative choice and more like setup for him not ending up as King of Westeros. It subtly undermines his character so that, by the end, he doesn't get rewarded. Game of Thrones tends to use this kind of predispositions, where characters almost dies or goes through a devastating situation before their actual end. The purpose is to subconsciously prepare the viewer, to soften the emotional impact, and honestly that's terrible writing. First, it takes away from the moment itself. An emotion felt, whether sorrow or joy, is still an emotion, and dulling it weakens the story. Second, it makes the outcome obvious. You know the character is going to get done dirty. Daenerys is the perfect example. After the whole dragon incident in the battle against the Night King, I was certain she was going to die. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, I just knew. And I was genuinely surprised when she didn't die before Jon took care of her. Overall, a disappointing final, fitting for a disappointing season. Food for thought. For some reason, the writers decided to humanize the villains and villainize the heroes. We followed the story for 8 seasons, and we saw just how disgusting and disturbing Cersei was, doing horrible things without hesitation, without remorse, without even a hint of regret. And now in season 8, we are suddenly meant to experience her pain, like she's some tragic main character we're supposed to feel sorry for. She dies in Jaime's arms, framed as this emotional, heartbreaking moment, and I just don't get it. What's the point of a villain if you're going to humanize them right at the very end? Imagine if Ramsay suddenly started crying while Jon was walking towards him, talking about how hard his life was, listing all the bad things that happened to him, apologizing in the process. That would have completely ruined the scene, right? Now you might say that Baelish begging for his life during his trial is a good example of how this can be done correctly, and that Cersei's case isn't that different, but Baelish was always portrayed as a snake, slimy, cowardly, and willing to do anything to survive. Him breaking down and begging actually fits his character. Cersei, on the other hand, was portrayed for most of the show as ruthless, deranged, and completely devoid of redeeming qualities. For her, the only fitting end was to die as who she truly was, not humanized, not softened, but exposed for what she really was, a mad woman capable of anything. And another thing, did trial by combat just got lost in transition or what? Jon could have easily demanded a trial by combat against Grey Worm, and probably beaten him without much trouble. I really don't think a jury made of his friends and family would have had an issue with that. You could argue that Grey Worm and the Unsullied aren't from Westeros, so they might not respect the tradition, fair enough, but Jon could have at least tried. And about Daenerys, I have a little poem I wrote. I am not a writer, so please don't be too harsh on me. It goes: freeing the slaves and burning the free, reviving the Dothraki, hoping no one will see. The only thing worse than her burning the people is the king being Bran the Cripple. Thank you. Can we get a round of applause? Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you guys for watching the videos I made for each season. Game of Thrones is in a league of its own as a series. I loved almost every second and every episode of it, and I genuinely tried to turn that love into the best videos I could make. I really hope that came true. Second, I won't rate this season, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the show. It feels like a completely different series. Character development we followed for seasons goes straight down the drain. Most characters act completely out of line compared to what we've seen from them so far, and the story itself feels rushed. Because of that, I don't think it's fair to rate the final season as part of Game of Thrones as a whole. Thank you guys, love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Ranking the whole series. So after watching all the seasons of Game of Thrones, it's only right to give the whole show a proper rating. And yes, that still means I'm excluding season 8 for the reasons I mentioned earlier. So if we add up the ratings for each season, we get a 9 for season 1, an 8.5 out of 10 for the second season, a 9.5 out of 10 for the third season, a perfect 10 for the fourth season, a disappointing 8 for the fifth season, a strong 9.5 out of 10 for the sixth season, and a very generous 8.5 out of 10 for the seventh season. When we add those together and divide them by the number of seasons, which in this case is 7, we end up with an overall rating of 9 out of 10. And honestly, that's an insanely high score for a TV series, but I think it's a fair rating for Game of Thrones, considering just how incredible most of the show was. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.